The moment Scarlett Vaughn crossed the ballroom toward Mason Cole, every camera in the room turned. Her ex-fiancé stood frozen by the bar, his new girlfriend's smile cracking at the edges. The entire Chicago business world held its breath. Because when a billionaire CEO who just lost everything publicly asks a man to dance, it's never just about the music. It's war. And Mason, a single father who just wanted to go home and kiss his daughter goodnight, was about to become her most dangerous weapon. If you want to see how a fake relationship destroys two lives before rebuilding them into something real, stay until the end. Hit that like button and comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. Mason Cole hated these events. The Valicrest Global Charity Gala stretched across the entire top floor of the Sinclair Hotel, all glass walls and polished marble that cost more than most people's houses. Chandeliers the size of compact cars hung from the ceiling. Women wore dresses that could fund college tuitions. Men checked their watches, Patek Philippe, Audemars Piguet, the kind of timepieces that whispered wealth without shouting. Mason checked his phone. 8:47 p.m. Ava's bedtime was 9. He'd promised to call. "Mr. Cole." Mason turned. Gerald Hastings, VP of International Operations, stood there holding 2 glasses of champagne. The man always looked like he'd just stepped out of a cologne advertisement. Silver hair, perfectly styled, suit tailored within an inch of its life. "Not drinking tonight?" Gerald extended 1 glass. "Driving," Mason said. "Thanks anyway." Gerald laughed, the sound sharp. "Always so responsible. That's why Scarlett keeps you around, isn't it? Someone has to actually work while the rest of us network." Mason didn't respond. Gerald was fishing, like he always did. The VP had been angling for Mason's position as Senior Logistics Director for 2 years now, ever since Mason had restructured the entire European supply chain and saved the company $40 million. "Quite the turnout," Gerald continued, scanning the room. "Everyone's here, the mayor, 3 senators, half the Fortune 500. He paused deliberately. "Even Scarlett's ex-fiancé, bold choice, showing up tonight." Mason's jaw tightened. He'd heard the rumors. Everyone had. 6 months ago, Scarlett Vaughn had been engaged to Dominic Hale, founder of Hale Tech Industries. Their engagement had dominated business magazines, Chicago's power couple, combined net worth north of $8 billion. Then Dominic had been photographed leaving a Miami hotel with Vanessa Chen, a Chinese-American actress whose last 3 movies had each crossed $1 billion globally. The tabloids had feasted on it for weeks. "I'm sure Ms. Vaughn can handle herself," Mason said carefully. Gerald's smile sharpened. "Can she?" "Word is the board's getting nervous. 30 years old, never been married, no family, and now publicly humiliated by the man she chose. Some are questioning whether she has the stability to lead a company this size." "That's garbage and you know it." The words came out harder than Mason intended. Gerald's eyebrows rose. "Protective, aren't we?" "I'm stating facts," Mason said flatly. "Scarlett Vaughn has grown this company's value by 62% in 4 years. She's opened operations in 17 new countries. She's the youngest person to ever take a logistics firm into the Fortune 100. Her personal life has nothing to do with her ability to run Valicrest." Gerald studied him for a long moment. "You really believe that? That business and personal can stay separate?" Mason thought about Ava, about the nights he'd left work early to make it to her school plays, the promotions he'd turned down because they required relocation, the careful balance he maintained every single day between being a good employee and being the only parent his daughter had left. "I think people deserve to be judged by their work," he said quietly. "How noble." Gerald's attention shifted across the room. "Well, looks like tonight might get interesting after all." Mason followed his gaze. Dominic Hale had just entered through the main doors. He looked exactly like his Forbes profile photo. Tall, angular, with dark hair styled in that deliberately careless way wealthy men seem to perfect. His suit probably cost $15,000. Vanessa Chen walked beside him, stunning in a red dress that hugged every curve, her hand resting possessively on his arm. The room's energy changed instantly. Conversations faltered. People turned to stare, then quickly looked away, then stared again when they thought no one was watching. Near the string quartet, Mason saw Scarlett. She stood with a small group of board members, wearing a midnight blue gown that somehow made her look both powerful and untouchable. Her dark blonde hair was pulled back in an elegant twist. Diamond earrings caught the light. To anyone else, she probably looked completely composed. But Mason had worked directly under Scarlett Vaughn for 3 years. He'd sat across from her during late-night strategy sessions. He'd seen her exhausted, frustrated, brilliantly alive when solving impossible problems. He knew the tiny tell, the way her left hand curled into a fist at her side when she was fighting to stay calm. She'd seen Dominic. "This should be good," Gerald murmured. $20 says she leaves within 15 minutes. Mason didn't answer. He was watching Scarlett's face. She didn't leave. Instead, she excused herself from the board members and walked directly toward the bar, which meant walking directly past Dominic and Vanessa. The crowd parted like water. Mason found himself moving closer, though he couldn't have said why. Some instinct. The same one that made him check on Ava 3 times every night, even though she was perfectly safe in her bed. Scarlett reached the bar, ordered something. The bartender moved quickly. Dominic's voice carried across the sudden quiet. "Scarlett." She didn't turn. "Scarlett, come on. Don't be childish." That made her turn. Slowly. "Childish," she repeated. The word was very soft, very precise. Dominic had the audacity to smile. "It's been 6 months. Surely we can be civilized." Civilized? Scarlett accepted her drink from the bartender, something clear in a rocks glass. "Is that what you call bringing your mistress to my company's charity event?" Vanessa's perfect smile never wavered, but something cold flickered in her eyes. "Former mistress," Dominic corrected smoothly. "Vanessa and I are engaged now. We wanted to make a public appearance together, and since this is technically a charity event open to major donors, well..." He shrugged, the gesture somehow both apologetic and smug. "I've donated quite generously to childhood literacy programs over the years." "How philanthropic." "Don't be bitter, Scarlett. It's not attractive." The words landed like a slap. Several people nearby actually gasped. Scarlett's expression didn't change, but that left hand curled tighter. "You're right," she said quietly. "Bitterness isn't attractive. Neither is desperation, or insecurity, or the need to parade your new relationship in front of your ex-fiancé like a prize you won at a carnival." Dominic's jaw tightened. "I'm not the one who couldn't keep a man satisfied." The room went absolutely silent. Mason was moving before he'd made a conscious decision. He crossed the distance between them in 6 strides, arriving at Scarlett's side just as her hand started to shake. "Ms. Vaughn," he said clearly, "the mayor's been asking for you." Scarlett blinked, focused on him. For just a second, he saw something raw and hurt in her eyes before the mask slammed back into place. "Mr. Cole," she said, "I wasn't aware you'd arrived. Just got here. The mayor mentioned wanting to discuss the infrastructure partnership before he leaves tonight." Mason kept his voice professional, neutral, like this was a normal business conversation and not a rescue operation in the middle of a social battlefield. Dominic's attention shifted to Mason, assessed him, found him wanting apparently because the man's expression barely changed. "And you are?" "Mason Cole, Senior Logistics Director." "Ah." Dominic's smile returned. "An employee. How helpful." The dismissal was clear. Mason felt it like a blade, sharp and quick. He'd spent his entire adult life being underestimated by wealthy people who couldn't imagine that intelligence or capability existed outside their tax bracket. Usually it didn't bother him. Tonight it made him furious. "Yes," Mason said evenly. "An employee. Someone who actually works for the success of this company instead of just showing up to charity events for the photo opportunities." Vanessa's eyes widened slightly. Dominic's face went very still. "Excuse me." "You're excused," Scarlett said. Her voice had changed, stronger now, fed by Mason's unexpected defense. "Mason, let's find the mayor." She turned to leave. Dominic's hand shot out, catching her wrist. "We're not done talking." "Actually," Scarlett said, looking down at his hand with something dangerous in her eyes, "we are. Permanently. 6 months ago. Or did you forget that conversation? I believe your exact words were, 'I need someone who understands that emotions are a weakness.' I was trying to help you." By cheating on me with an actress you'd been seeing for 8 months before you ended our engagement? Dominic released her wrist. That's not... It's exactly what happened, Dominic. I have the private investigator's report, including the timeline, including the hotel receipts, including the recordings of you telling Vanessa that you were only staying with me long enough to secure the merger between Valicrest and Hailtech. Vanessa's smile finally cracked. That merger never happened, Dominic said tightly. Because you sabotaged it out of spite. I sabotaged it because your contract included a clause that would have given you 40% control of my company within 2 years. Did you really think I wouldn't notice? That I'd be so desperate to keep you that I'd sign away everything I built? The crowd was openly staring now. Phones were out. This would be on social media within minutes. Dominic seemed to realize it at the same moment. His expression smoothed out, became sympathetic. Scarlett, you're making a scene. This isn't like you. You're right, Scarlett said. The old me would have smiled and walked away and pretended everything was fine while you publicly humiliated me. The old me would have protected your reputation even after you destroyed mine. She stepped closer, her voice dropping so only their small circle could hear. But that woman died the day I realized you never loved me. You just wanted what I built. She turned away and walked directly toward Mason. The music was still playing, some classical piece the string quartet had been working through all evening. Mason didn't recognize it. Scarlett stopped in front of him, extended her hand. Dance with me, she said. It wasn't a request. Mason's heart kicked against his ribs. Ms. Vaughn, I don't think... Please. That single word changed everything. Because it wasn't the CEO talking anymore. It was just a woman who'd been publicly gutted and was desperately trying not to fall apart in front of 300 witnesses. Mason took her hand. The crowd parted again as they walked toward the dance floor. Mason was aware of every eye on them, every camera tracking their movement. His phone buzzed in his pocket, probably Ava's babysitter wondering why he hadn't called yet. Scarlett stepped into his arms with the kind of practiced grace that came from years of expensive lessons. Mason put one hand on her waist, careful to keep the touch professional. Her hand rested on his shoulder. They began to move. Thank you, Scarlett said quietly. For what? Not asking questions, not making this weird. Just helping. Mason said nothing. The music swelled around them. Scarlett was a good dancer, better than him by a considerable margin, but she let him lead without making it obvious. He's watching us, she murmured. I know. The board members are watching too, probably trying to decide if I've completely lost my mind, dancing with an employee at a formal gala. Have you? Scarlett's lips twitched, almost a smile. Maybe. I haven't decided yet. They turned slowly. Mason could see Dominic at the edge of the dance floor, Vanessa speaking urgently in his ear. Several board members clustered near the windows, their expressions unreadable. Can I ask you something? Scarlett said. Sure. Why did you defend me back there? You could have just walked past. Let me handle it myself. Mason considered the question. Considered Scarlett Vaughn, 30 years old, billionaire CEO, one of the most powerful people in Chicago, currently holding on to him like he was the only solid thing in a room full of quicksand. Because it was the right thing to do, he said simply. And because you're a good boss. You pay fairly, you listen to your employees, you make decisions based on data instead of ego. I've worked for a lot of people who didn't do any of those things. That's it? Professional courtesy? Is there supposed to be another reason? Scarlett studied his face. Most people want something from me. Money, access, connections. You've never asked for anything. I get a paycheck every 2 weeks and health insurance that covers my daughter's asthma medication. That's enough. Something shifted in Scarlett's expression. You have a daughter? Ava, she's 7. You've never mentioned her. You never asked. The words weren't accusatory, just factual, but Scarlett flinched slightly anyway. I'm sorry, she said. I should have. I should know these things about the people who work for me. You run a company with 43,000 employees across 6 continents. You can't know everyone's life story. I could know yours. You report directly to me. Mason shrugged. I prefer keeping work, and personal separate. Why? The question was genuinely curious. Mason thought about how to answer. Because mixing them gets complicated, he said finally. And I can't afford complicated. I have a daughter who needs me to be steady, reliable, present. If I start blurring those lines, if I start letting office politics or relationships affect how I show up for her, he shook his head. I can't risk it. Scarlett was quiet for several measures of music. Her mother? She asked softly. Died. 4 years ago. Cancer. I'm sorry. Thank you. They moved in silence. The song was ending. Mason should have been relieved. This strange, surreal dance would be over. He could make his excuses and leave, call Ava, fall back into the normal rhythm of his life. Instead, he felt Scarlett's hand tighten on his shoulder. Mason, she said, I need to ask you something, and I need you to really think about your answer before you say no. Every instinct in his body went on alert. Okay? Scarlett took a breath. When she spoke, her voice was steady, but he could feel the tension radiating through her frame. I need you to be my boyfriend. Mason actually stumbled. Scarlett's hand on his shoulder kept them both upright, turning the misstep into what might have looked like an intentional dance move. What? Not real, Scarlett clarified quickly. Fake? Pretend. Just for appearances. 3 months. Maybe less if the situation resolves faster. Ms. Vaughn, the board is voting in 12 weeks on whether to force me out as CEO, she said, the words coming faster now. Dominic's been working behind the scenes for months, ever since I refused to sign his merger contract. He's convinced half the board that I'm emotionally unstable, that I'm too young, too inexperienced, too volatile to handle a company this size. Tonight was supposed to be the final nail in my coffin. Show up with his new fiancée, prove that he's moved on, while I'm still bitter and alone and unable to maintain a personal relationship. That's insane. That's business. Image matters in this world. Perception is reality. If the board believes I can't handle my personal life, they'll assume I can't handle the company either. The music ended. They stopped moving, but neither of them stepped apart. So you want me to pretend to be your boyfriend to convince your board you're stable, Mason said slowly. Yes. For 3 months. Or until the vote, whichever comes first. And what exactly would this involve? Scarlett's eyes held his. Public appearances, company events, maybe a few carefully staged paparazzi photos. Nothing inappropriate. Nothing that crosses professional lines. Just enough to create the narrative that I'm in a healthy, stable relationship with someone genuine. Someone who isn't after my money or my name. Someone like a single father who works in logistics. Someone exactly like that. Mason's phone buzzed again. He ignored it. This is crazy, he said. I know. You're asking me to lie. To your board, to the media, to everyone. I'm asking you to help me keep the company I built from being stolen by a man who tried to manipulate me into signing it away. Why me? You could hire someone. An actor. Someone who does this professionally. Because everyone would know. They'd investigate, they'd find the contract, and it would make everything worse. Scarlett's voice dropped. I need someone real. Someone with an actual life and job and reasons to exist that have nothing to do with me. Someone who... She paused. Someone I can trust. You barely know me. I know you work 60-hour weeks and still leave early every Tuesday for your daughter's guitar lessons. I know you turned down the VP position last year because it required relocating to New York. And you wouldn't do that to Ava's school stability. I know you've never once leaked information to competitors, even though at least 3 of them have tried to recruit you. I know you defended me tonight when you had absolutely nothing to gain from it. Mason stared at her. You noticed all that. I notice everything about the people I depend on, and like it or not, I depend on you. You keep the entire global supply chain running smoothly. Without you, this company loses millions daily. Scarlett's hand slipped from his shoulder. I'm not asking you to do this for free. I'll compensate you, generously. Whatever you need, college fund for Ava, new house, car, investments, I'll make sure you and your daughter are set for life. You think I can be bought? I think everyone has a price, and I'm offering to meet yours. The words hung between them. Around them, the gala continued. People laughing, glasses clinking, the gentle pulse of wealth and power that never really stopped moving. Mason thought about Ava, about her asthma medication that cost $800 a month even with insurance, about the roof that needed replacing on his rental house, about the college savings account that grew agonizingly slowly, no matter how carefully he budgeted. He thought about his wife, Lauren, about the promise he'd made to her in those final weeks. Take care of our girl, give her everything we dreamed about. No, he said. Scarlett's face went very still. No? I'm not doing this. I don't care how much money you offer. I'm not using my life, or Ava's, as a prop in your corporate war. Mason, you want to know why I've never asked you for anything? Because the moment I do, the moment I take something beyond my salary, I become compromised. I become someone who owes you, and I won't live like that. I won't teach my daughter that everything has a price, and people can be bought if the number's high enough. Scarlett's expression shifted through several emotions too quickly to name. I'm not trying to buy you. Yes, you are. That's exactly what you're doing. You're trying to purchase 3 months of my life because it's convenient for you, because you're desperate and scared and you think money solves everything. I'm offering you financial security. You're offering me a transaction, and I'm not interested. Mason stepped back, away from her, away from the offer and the desperation and the dangerous pull of all that money. I'm sorry, he said. I hope you find what you're looking for, but it's not me. He turned to leave. They're already printing the story, Scarlett said quietly. Mason stopped. The entertainment sites, the gossip blogs, they started posting about us the moment we stepped onto this dance floor. Scarlett pulled out her phone, held it up so he could see the screen. Scarlett Vaughn's mystery man, billionaire CEO, spotted in intimate dance with unknown partner hours after ex-fiancé's public appearance. The photo showed them mid-dance, Scarlett's hand on his shoulder, their faces close together. The angle made it look romantic, intimate, like they'd been lovers for years instead of employer and employee for 3. By tomorrow morning, every major outlet will have picked this up, Scarlett continued. They'll investigate. They'll find out who you are. They'll dig into your life, Ava's life, your late wife's medical records, your finances, everything, and they'll create whatever narrative gets the most clicks. Mason's blood went cold. You're threatening me. I'm warning you. The story's already out there. We can't stop it, but we can control it. We can decide what it says instead of letting tabloids decide for us. Or I can just refuse to comment, ignore it. It'll die down in a week. Will it? Scarlett's voice was very soft now, very certain. You think the media will leave you alone once they realize you're the man who danced with Chicago's most eligible billionaire the same night her ex-fiancé showed up with a movie star? You think they won't camp outside your house, follow Ava to school, interview her teachers and babysitters and classmates? Stop. I'm sorry, I really am, but this is the reality now. The moment you took my hand, the moment we stepped onto that floor, you became part of this story, whether you wanted to or not. Mason's hands curled into fists. You planned this. You knew what would happen. I hoped it would help. I didn't expect... Scarlett trailed off, looking almost surprised. I didn't expect you to actually defend me. Most people don't. So now what? I either agree to your fake relationship or get destroyed by tabloids? Or we work together to make sure the story that gets told is one we can both live with. Mason looked at her. This woman who built empires and wore armor made of diamonds and had just admitted she was desperate enough to weaponize him against her own board. This woman who was offering him everything and asking for something he couldn't give. His phone buzzed. He pulled it out. Babysitter. Ava's asking when you're calling. Should I tell her you're running late? The message felt like a punch to the chest. I need to go, Mason said. Mason. I have a daughter waiting for me, a real life that has nothing to do with billionaires or board votes or fake relationships, and I'm not letting you or anyone turn that into a commodity. He walked away before she could respond. The crowd parted. No one tried to stop him. He was nobody, after all. Just an employee. Just another face in a room full of people whose net worth exceeded his lifetime earnings by factors too large to calculate. He made it to his car, a 10-year-old Honda Civic that had been Lauren's before she died, and sat in the driver's seat with his hands shaking. His phone lit up with notifications: Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, news alerts, all of them featuring his face. All of them asking the same question: who is Scarlett Vaughn's mystery boyfriend? Mason closed his eyes, called Ava's babysitter. "Hey, Sarah, I'm on my way home. Tell Ava I'm sorry I'm late." "No problem, Mr. Cole. She's already in bed, but she wanted to wait up." "Let her know I'll read an extra chapter tomorrow to make up for it." "Will do." Mason ended the call, started the car, drove home through Chicago's streets, suddenly feeling like they belonged to a different world than the one he'd left at the Sinclair Hotel. When he arrived at his small rental house in Rogers Park, Sarah met him at the door. "Everything okay?" she asked. "You look stressed." "Long night. Thanks for staying late." "Of course." "Oh, and someone called the house phone around 9. Didn't leave a message, but the caller ID showed a 312 number. Downtown Chicago area code. Mason paid Sarah, locked the door behind her, and climbed the stairs to Ava's room. His daughter was asleep, curled around her favorite stuffed elephant, dark hair spread across her pillow. She looked so much like Lauren in that moment that Mason had to stop in the doorway and just breathe. Take care of our girl. Give her everything we dreamed about. He'd promised, and he'd keep that promise, no matter what Scarlett Vaughn or the media or anyone else thought they could take from him. Mason pulled Ava's blanket up to her shoulders, kissed her forehead, and whispered, "I love you, sweetheart." Then he went downstairs to his laptop and started searching his own name. The internet had already decided his entire life story. The articles multiplied like bacteria. By 6 a.m., Mason had found himself mentioned in 47 different publications. By 7, that number had doubled. Local Chicago blogs, national entertainment sites, international business journals. Everyone wanted to know who the mystery man was who danced with Scarlett Vaughn while her billionaire ex-fiancé watched. Some of the coverage was almost respectful. Chicago Tribune ran a piece speculating about whether Valicrest Global's notoriously private CEO had finally found love again after her public breakup. They'd used a photo from the gala that made Mason look almost handsome, professional, like someone who might actually belong in Scarlett's world. The tabloids were less kind. Daily Buzz had already published a full exposé titled "From Rags to Riches, Single Dad Lands Billionaire CEO After Wife's Tragic Death." They'd found Lauren's obituary, Ava's school photos from the Public District website, even his rental house address and monthly payment amount. Mason had to read that last part 3 times before his brain processed it. They'd published where he lived, where Ava lived. His phone rang at 7:23 a.m. Unknown number. He let it go to voicemail. It rang again immediately. Different number. By the time Ava stumbled downstairs in her unicorn pajamas, rubbing sleep from her eyes, Mason had received 16 calls from numbers he didn't recognize. "Morning, Bug," he said, forcing brightness into his voice. "Hungry?" Ava climbed onto her chair at the kitchen table. "Can we have pancakes?" "Sure thing." He pulled out the pancake mix, started measuring ingredients. His hands were steady. That was good. Ava always noticed when he was upset. "Daddy, there's people outside." Mason's head snapped up. "What?" Ava pointed toward the front window. "Cars and people with cameras." Mason crossed the kitchen in 3 strides, looked through the gap in the curtains. 4 vehicles lined the street in front of his house. 2 vans with satellite equipment on top. Several people with professional cameras, the kind with lenses longer than Mason's forearm. A woman in a blazer checking her makeup in a compact mirror. News crews. At his house. At 7:30 in the morning. "Daddy?" Mason let the curtain fall. Turned back to Ava with what he hoped was a calm expression. "It's okay, sweetheart. Just some confusion about work stuff. They'll leave soon." "They're taking pictures of our house." "I know. Try not to worry about it." Ava studied him with those dark eyes that saw too much, understood more than a 7-year-old should have to. "Is this about the lady from your work party?" Mason's breath caught. "What?" "Sarah showed me." Ava pulled out his tablet from where it sat on the kitchen counter. She'd opened a browser to one of the gossip sites. The main image showed Mason and Scarlett mid-dance, looking at each other with expressions the photographer had somehow captured at the exact moment they appeared intimate. "You looked pretty," Ava said seriously, "in your fancy suit." "Ava, sweetheart, you shouldn't be looking at— Is she your girlfriend now?" The question landed like a grenade. Mason crouched down to Ava's eye level. "No, she's my boss. We danced at a work party because she needed help with something. That's all." "The internet says you're dating." "The internet is wrong." "But the picture was taken out of context. Ava, listen to me." Mason took his daughter's small hands in his. Sometimes grown-ups have complicated work situations. And sometimes other people who don't know the real story, make up things that aren't true. That's what happened here. Ms. Vaughn and I are not dating. I work for her company. That's our only relationship. Ava chewed her bottom lip, thinking. "Sarah said you looked happy in the picture." Mason felt something twist in his chest. "I was trying to help someone who needed help. That's different from being happy." "Okay." Ava didn't sound convinced, but she let it drop. "Can I still have pancakes?" "Absolutely." Mason made pancakes while trying to ignore the cameras outside and the phone that wouldn't stop buzzing. He got Ava fed, dressed, ready for school. The normal Tuesday morning routine, except nothing about it felt normal. At 8:15, he called the school. "Rogers Park Elementary, this is Monica." "Hi, Monica. This is Mason Cole, Ava's dad. I need to speak with Principal Harrison if she's available." "Is everything all right?" "There's a situation. It's complicated." Principal Harrison came on the line 90 seconds later. "Mr. Cole, Monica said it was urgent." Mason explained quickly. The gala, the photos, the media camping outside his house. He didn't mention Scarlett's offer. That still felt too raw, too personal. "I don't know if they'll follow us to school," he finished, "but I wanted to give you a heads up, just in case. Ava doesn't need to be exposed to this." Principal Harrison was quiet for a moment. "I appreciate the call. We'll have extra staff monitoring the entrances today. If any media personnel attempt to enter school property, we'll contact the police immediately." "Thank you." "Mr. Cole, can I ask, is Ava safe? Is there any actual threat here?" Mason looked at his daughter, who was now building a tower out of her alphabet blocks in the living room, completely unaware of the chaos swirling around their lives. "I don't think so," he said, "but I honestly don't know anymore." He drove Ava to school using the back route through residential streets, checking his rearview mirror every 30 seconds. No one followed. The news vans apparently had decided staking out an empty house was more valuable than chasing a Honda Civic through morning traffic. At school drop-off, Ava hugged him extra tight. "Love you, Daddy." "Love you too, Bug. Have a good day. Learn something amazing." "I will." She ran toward the entrance where her best friend Emma waited. Two normal 7-year-old girls, backpacks bouncing, already giggling about something. Mason watched until they disappeared inside. His phone rang again. This time he recognized the number, Scarlett. He let it ring out. She called back immediately. On the third attempt, Mason finally answered. "What?" "Mason." Scarlett's voice was tight. "Have you seen the coverage?" "Hard to miss when there's 4 news vans parked outside my house." Silence. Then, quietly, "I'm sorry." "Are you?" "Because this feels exactly like what you wanted. Maximum exposure, maximum pressure, maximum leverage to force me into your fake relationship." "I didn't want this," Scarlett said. "I didn't want them to publish your address or dig into your private life. I didn't want any of this to touch Ava." "Then you should have thought about that before you dragged me onto that dance floor." "You're right." The admission seemed to cost her something. "You're absolutely right. I was desperate and stupid and I didn't think about the consequences. But Mason, the situation is getting worse. Dominic's team is already spinning this as evidence that I'm unstable, that I'm so desperate for relationship validation that I'm manufacturing romances with employees." "Maybe you are." "Maybe I am," Scarlett agreed, "but that doesn't change the fact that both of our lives are about to become very public very quickly. We can either let that narrative destroy us separately, or we can work together to control it." Mason pulled into the Valcrest Global parking garage, killed the engine. "I told you no, and I'm asking you to reconsider. Please, just meet with me. Let me explain the full situation. If you still want nothing to do with this after that, I'll have my PR team issue a statement saying we're not involved and you were simply being polite at a company event. You could issue that statement right now. I could, but it won't stop the media from following you. It won't stop them from digging into your life or showing up at Ava's school or publishing speculation pieces about your marriage and your finances and every private detail they can uncover. At least if we work together, we can set boundaries. We can protect what matters. Mason closed his eyes. Where? My office, 20 minutes. I need to check in with my team first. Fine. 30 minutes. Scarlett paused. And Mason? Thank you. The line went dead. Mason sat in his car for another 5 minutes, trying to organize his thoughts into something coherent. This was insane. All of it. Yesterday, he'd been a single father with a normal job and a quiet life. Today, he was being blackmailed by a billionaire into a fake relationship while news vans camped outside his house. He should quit. Walk away from Valicrest Global entirely, find a new job, move to a different city where no one knew his face, except that was exactly what the tabloids would report. Mystery man flees after night with billionaire CEO. They'd turn him into either a gold digger who got caught or a coward who couldn't handle the spotlight. Either way, Ava would grow up knowing her father ran from the first real challenge he'd faced since Lauren died. Mason got out of the car. The Valicrest Global building rose 47 stories above Chicago's financial district, all glass and steel and corporate ambition. Mason had worked here for 3 years. He knew the security guards by name, knew which elevators were fastest, knew exactly how many steps it took from the lobby to his office on the 32nd floor. Today, everyone stared. Marcus at the security desk did a double-take when Mason walked in. Holy hell, Cole, you're famous. Apparently. That was really you? At the gala with Ms. Vaughn? It was really me doing my job at a company event, that's all. Marcus grinned. Man, that's not what the internet thinks. They're saying you're the mystery boyfriend, that you've been secretly dating for months. The internet is wrong. If you say so. Marcus waved him through security. But for what it's worth, good for you. She seems like she could use someone genuine. Mason didn't respond. He took the elevator to 32, walked through the logistics department toward his office. Conversation stopped as he passed. Heads turned. Someone actually pulled out their phone to take a photo. Jennifer from supply chain management cornered him before he reached his door. Is it true? She demanded. Are you actually dating Scarlett Vaughn? No. But the pictures were taken at a company gala where I danced with our CEO because she asked. That's the whole story. Jennifer's expression said she didn't believe a word. You know, Gerald's been telling everyone you're trying to sleep your way into the executive suite. Mason's jaw tightened. Gerald can think whatever he wants. He's saying you orchestrated the whole thing, that you saw an opportunity when Dominic showed up and you exploited it. Then Gerald doesn't know me very well. Just be careful, Jennifer said, lowering her voice. This building runs on politics and perception. You're making some people very nervous. She walked away before Mason could respond. He made it to his office, closed the door, and stood there for a moment just breathing. His desk was exactly as he'd left it. Project reports, shipping manifests, 3 coffee mugs he kept forgetting to take to the kitchen. Normal. Real. His life before everything went sideways. 28 minutes had passed since Scarlett's call. Mason took the executive elevator to 47. Scarlett's assistant, a sharp-eyed woman named Patricia, who'd worked for 3 CEOs before Scarlett, looked up when he arrived. Mr. Cole, she's expecting you. Patricia's expression was carefully neutral. Coffee? Water? I'm fine. Right this way. She led him through the executive suite, all modern furniture and original artwork that probably cost more than Mason's car, to a set of double doors at the end. Knocked twice. Come in, Scarlett called. Patricia opened the door, gestured Mason inside, then closed it behind him. Scarlett's office was huge. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the Chicago skyline. The desk was massive, some kind of dark wood that looked hand-carved. Shelves lined one wall filled with business books and awards, and a few personal photos Mason had never noticed before. Scarlett stood by the windows, still wearing what looked like yesterday's clothes, slacks and a blouse that had probably been crisp at the gala, but now looked wrinkled and tired. Her hair was down, falling past her shoulders. She looked exhausted. "You didn't sleep," Mason said. "Neither did you, apparently." Scarlett gestured to the dark circles Mason knew were under his own eyes. "Coffee?" "Your assistant already offered." "I'm offering again. Because this conversation is going to be long and uncomfortable and we're both running on fumes." Mason shrugged. "Fine." Scarlett poured 2 cups from a machine that probably cost more than Mason's monthly rent, handed him one, and sat down on the leather couch along the wall. Not behind her desk. It was a deliberate choice, trying to make this feel less like a business negotiation. Mason remained standing. "I spoke with my attorneys this morning," Scarlett began, "and my head of PR. They both agree the situation is untenable. The media coverage isn't dying down. It's accelerating. By tonight, every major outlet will have published something about us. By tomorrow, the speculation will have turned into accepted fact unless we actively counter it. So issue a denial." "I told you, that won't stop them. They'll just pivot to speculation about why we're denying it. Secret relationship, forbidden office romance, all the usual narratives." Scarlett set her coffee down untouched. "Mason, I need you to understand something. The board vote happens in 12 weeks. Right now I have maybe 40% solid support. Another 30% could go either way. The final 30% are actively working to remove me. Because of Dominic. Because of a lot of things. I'm young. I'm a woman. I took over this company from my father when I was 26, and some of those board members still see me as a child playing in the executive suite. Dominic's betrayal just gave them the ammunition they needed to argue I'm too emotionally unstable to lead. That's garbage. That's politics, and politics run on perception." Scarlett stood, walked to the windows. "If I show up to that vote as a single woman who was publicly humiliated by her ex-fiancé and then apparently had some kind of desperate rebound with an employee at a charity gala, I lose. The board will force me out. They'll install someone they can control, probably Gerald Hastings, since he's been campaigning for your position and mine for the past year." Mason's stomach dropped. "Gerald's involved in this. He's one of Dominic's inside contacts. Has been since before the engagement ended. He feeds Dominic information about company operations, board sentiment, strategic vulnerabilities. In exchange, Dominic promised him your job once the merger went through." "Jesus." "Yeah." Scarlett turned to face him. "So when I say I need your help, I'm not just trying to save my own position. I'm trying to save this company from being gutted by people who see it as nothing but an asset to be exploited. Gerald doesn't care about the 43,000 people who work here. Dominic certainly doesn't. They care about profit margins and stock prices and how much money they can extract before moving on to the next acquisition." Mason set his coffee down. "Why me? You still haven't explained why it has to be me specifically." "Because you're real," Scarlett said simply. "You have an actual life, a job, a daughter, a history that has nothing to do with wealth or corporate maneuvering. If I showed up with some actor or paid escort, the media would tear that apart in 48 hours. But you? You're the senior logistics director who's been working here for 3 years. You have performance reviews and project records and colleagues who can vouch for your competence. You're not someone I could have just manufactured for this situation. I'm convenient. You're credible. There's a difference." Mason walked to the windows, looked out at the city, stretching toward the lake. Somewhere down there, news vans were still parked outside his house. Somewhere down there, Ava was in school trying to have a normal day while her classmates probably whispered about the pictures they'd seen online. "What exactly would this entail?" he asked quietly. Scarlett came to stand beside him, not too close, respectful of his space. "Public appearances at company events, maybe 4 or 5 over the next 12 weeks, a few carefully staged photos for social media to establish the relationship narrative. Possibly one interview with a friendly journalist to set the record straight on our own terms. And privately? Privately, nothing changes. You do your job. I do mine. We maintain professional boundaries. This is purely for external consumption." "What about Ava?" Scarlett's expression softened. "We keep her out of it completely. No photos, no mentions, no exposure. As far as the public knows, my relationship is with you, not your family. Your daughter remains entirely private." The media's already found her. I know, and I'll have my security team monitor your house and her school. If anyone attempts to approach her or photograph her, they'll handle it immediately. Mason turned to look at Scarlett directly. You're asking me to lie to everyone. My daughter, my coworkers, the board, the world. I'm asking you to participate in a mutually beneficial arrangement that protects both of our interests. That's corporate speak for lying. Yes, Scarlett said. It is. At least she was honest about that. Mason thought about Lauren, about the promise he'd made, about what she would have said about all this. She would have hated it. Lauren had been radically, almost painfully honest. She'd once returned to a store because they'd undercharged her by $3. She'd taught Ava that lying was wrong under any circumstances, even when the truth was hard. But Lauren had also been practical. She'd understood that sometimes the world didn't operate on absolute morality. She'd understood that protecting the people you loved sometimes required compromise. How much? Mason asked. Scarlett blinked. What? You said you'd compensate me generously. How much are we talking about? Something shifted in Scarlett's expression. Disappointment, maybe. Like she'd hoped he'd agree for nobler reasons. $200,000, she said, paid in full at the end of the 12 weeks, assuming you fulfill the terms of the arrangement. Mason's brain stuttered over the number. $200,000. That was 4 years of his salary. That was Ava's college fund fully endowed with enough left over for grad school. That was a house, an actual house they owned instead of rented, with a yard and a garage and everything Lauren had wanted for their family. Plus, Scarlett continued, living arrangements. The media's already compromised your current address. I'll set you up in a luxury apartment downtown close to Ava's school. 3 bedrooms, full security, all expenses covered for the duration of the arrangement and 6 months after. You've thought this through. I spent all night thinking this through. I also had my lawyers draw up a contract. Scarlett walked to her desk, pulled out a thick document. Everything we've discussed is outlined here. Terms, compensation, confidentiality clauses, exit conditions. You're welcome to have your own attorney review it before signing. Mason took the contract, flipped through pages of dense legal language. There's a clause here about maintaining appearances of genuine romantic interest in public settings. He looked up. Define that. Hand-holding, standing close together, the occasional kiss on the cheek for photographers. Nothing more intimate than what you'd see from any couple who's been together a few months. No actual kissing. Not unless you're comfortable with it and the situation calls for it, which I doubt it will. Mason kept reading. It says here either party can terminate the arrangement with 2 weeks' notice, but if I terminate, I forfeit the compensation. Correct. I need a commitment. If you walk away halfway through, it undermines the entire narrative and makes the situation worse than if we'd never started. But you can walk away any time and keep your money. I'm paying you to provide a service. If I terminate the arrangement early, you still get compensated for the time served at a prorated amount. It's all outlined in Section 7. Mason found Section 7. Read it twice. The contract was actually fair, more fair than he'd expected. Scarlett wasn't trying to trap him. She was offering a legitimate business transaction with clear terms and reasonable protections for both parties, which somehow made it worse. Because if this was just exploitation, if she was being manipulative and dishonest, Mason could walk away with a clear conscience. But Scarlett was being transparent. She was desperate, yes, but she was also offering him a genuine opportunity to secure his daughter's future in exchange for 12 weeks of his time. I need to think about it, he said. Scarlett nodded. I understand, but Mason, I need an answer by tomorrow morning. The longer we wait, the more the narrative solidifies without our input. Tomorrow morning, got it. Mason headed for the door. Mason? He stopped, hand on the handle. I'm sorry, Scarlett said quietly. I know this isn't fair to you or Ava. I know I'm asking you to compromise your principles for my benefit. If there was any other way, there's always another way, Mason interrupted. You just don't like the alternatives. He left before she could respond. The executive elevator felt like a cage on the ride down. Mason's head was spinning, his thoughts fractured into 1,000 competing arguments. $200,000. Lying to everyone. Financial security. Compromising everything he believed in. Ava's future. Lauren's disappointment. By the time he reached the parking garage, Mason had made and unmade the decision 6 different times. His phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. Mr. Cole, this is Richard Jang from the Chicago Sun-Times. I'd love to speak with you about your relationship with Scarlett Vaughn. Please call me at your earliest convenience. Mason deleted it. 3 more texts came in before he reached his car. 2 from journalists. One from someone claiming to be a talent agent who wanted to discuss monetizing his newfound fame. He blocked all 3 numbers. At a red light on Michigan Avenue, Mason called Ava's school. Rogers Park Elementary. Hi, Monica. It's Mason Cole again. Is Principal Harrison available? One moment. The principal came on quickly. Mr. Cole? Everything all right? Has there been any media activity at the school? Not so far. We've had a few calls from journalists asking about Ava's enrollment, but we refuse to confirm or deny any student information. Standard protocol. Good. Thank you. Mr. Cole, can I ask, how long do you expect this situation to continue? Mason had no idea how to answer that question. I'm working on it, he said finally. He drove home. The news vans were still there, but they'd been joined by additional vehicles. 7 in total now, creating a small media encampment on his quiet residential street. A reporter spotted Mason's car and ran toward him, microphone extended. Others followed. Mr. Cole, can you comment on your relationship with Scarlett Vaughn? Are you living together? How long have you been dating? Did you know about Dominic Hale before the gala? Mason kept his head down, pushed through the crowd without responding. Got to his front door, unlocked it, slammed it shut behind him. The reporters kept shouting questions through the wood. Inside, his house felt violated somehow, like the walls had grown thinner, more transparent, like privacy was now something that existed only in memory. Mason's phone rang. Scarlett again. He answered. They're at my house, he said without preamble. 7 vehicles, at least a dozen reporters. They tried to mob me in my own driveway. I know. I'm watching the coverage. Scarlett's voice was tight. Mason, this is exactly what I was worried about. It's going to get worse before it gets better. How much worse? There's an entertainment show planning a segment on you for tonight. They've already interviewed 3 of your neighbors and apparently found your college roommate from 10 years ago. Mason's vision actually blurred for a second. This is insane. I know. I can't live like this. Ava can't live like this. I know. So what do I do? Tell me, Scarlett, because I'm out of ideas here. Silence on the other end. Then, sign the contract. Let me move you and Ava into the apartment tonight. Let me provide security, handle the media, control the narrative. It's not perfect, but it's better than what's happening right now. Mason looked around his living room, at the couch where he and Lauren had watched movies, at the marks on the wall where Ava had measured her height every birthday, at the life they'd built together in this imperfect, too small, absolutely precious space. If I do this, he said slowly, we do it my way. I want final approval on any public statements. I want guaranteed protection for Ava, not just from media, but from any consequences this might have on her school life, her friendships, her future. I want it in writing that the moment this starts affecting her negatively, I can walk away regardless of the contract terms. Done. I'm not finished. I also want transparency. If the board situation changes, if Dominic makes a move, if anything happens that affects this arrangement, you tell me immediately. No surprises, no corporate secrets. We're supposed to be partners in this? Then we act like partners. Agreed. And one more thing. Mason's throat felt tight. We tell Ava the truth. Not the public truth, the real truth. I'm not lying to my 7-year-old daughter about this. Scarlett was quiet for a long moment. Mason, she's 7. How do you explain this to a 7-year-old? I'll figure it out. But I'm not teaching her that deception is acceptable. She'll know this is a business arrangement. She'll know it's temporary. She'll know the difference between what we're showing the world and what's actually real. That's a lot to ask of a child. She's my child, and she's smarter than you think. Another pause. Then, okay, we tell Ava the truth. Mason closed his eyes, felt the decision settling into his bones like concrete. Send me the revised contract. I'll sign it tonight. Thank you, Mason. Don't thank me yet. We haven't even started. He ended the call, stood in his living room for another 5 minutes, just breathing. Then he called Ava's school and arranged to pick her up early. The apartment Scarlett had arranged was on the 42nd floor of a building Mason had only ever seen from the outside. The kind of place where doormen wore actual uniforms, and the lobby had a grand piano no one ever played, where the elevator required a key card just to access the residential floors. Mason stood in the middle of the living room with Ava's hand clutched in his, trying to process the sheer absurdity of his new temporary reality. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Lake Michigan. The kitchen had marble countertops and appliances that looked like they belonged in a spaceship. 3 bedrooms, each larger than the living room in their old house. 2.5 bathrooms with heated floors and towel warmers. "Daddy," Ava whispered, "is this really where we're staying?" "For a little while, yeah. It's bigger than Emma's whole house." "I know, Bug." Ava let go of his hand and walked slowly toward the windows, her shoes squeaking on the hardwood. She pressed her nose against the glass, looking down at the city 42 stories below. "I can see our school from here, I think." "Is that it? The building with the red roof?" Mason joined her at the window. "Yeah, that's it." "This is so weird." "Tell me about it." The moving company Scarlett had hired had already transported their essentials: clothes, toiletries, Ava's stuffed animals, and books, Mason's laptop and work files. Everything else remained in their rental house, which now sat empty except for furniture that suddenly seemed shabby compared to the sleek, modern pieces filling this apartment. Scarlett's head of security, a former Secret Service agent named Marcus Chen, had supervised the entire move. He was currently doing a final sweep of the apartment, checking locks and sight lines and whatever else security professionals checked. "All clear," Marcus said, emerging from the master bedroom. "Cameras are active in the hallway and lobby. I've got 2 people monitoring overnight. No one gets up here without my team knowing about it." "Thank you," Mason said. Marcus handed him a business card. "My cell number. Call anytime, day or night. Literally anything seems off. You call me first." "Got it." "I mean it, Mr. Cole. Someone follows you, someone approaches your daughter, someone even looks at you wrong. You call. That's what I'm here for." Mason pocketed the card. Marcus left after doing one more check of the door locks, as if they might have mysteriously unlocked themselves in the past 30 seconds. Then it was just Mason and Ava, alone in an apartment that cost more per month than Mason's annual salary, surrounded by luxury they'd done nothing to earn. Ava had found the second bedroom, the one Mason had designated as hers, and was arranging her stuffed animals on the bed with intense concentration. Her elephant, Mr. Trunk, got the place of honor against the pillows. The others formed a protective semicircle around him. Mason leaned against the doorframe, watching her work. "Ava, sweetheart, we need to talk." She didn't look up from adjusting Mr. Trunk's position. "About the lady?" "Yeah, about Ms. Vaughn, and about why we're here." Ava finally turned to face him. Her expression was too serious for 7 years old, too knowing. She had inherited that from Lauren, the ability to see through the comfortable lies adults told children. "Are you going to tell me the truth, or the kid version?" Mason's chest tightened. "When have I ever lied to you?" "You said the reporters would leave. They didn't. You said this was just work confusion. But we're living in a fancy apartment now, and you signed papers today that you wouldn't let me see." She'd noticed him signing the contract. Of course she had. Ava noticed everything. Mason sat down on the bed beside the stuffed animal army. Ava climbed up next to him, tucking herself against his side like she used to when she was smaller. "Okay," he said. Truth. Ms. Vaughn asked me to help her with something, and I said yes. It's a work thing, but it's also kind of personal. She's having problems with some people who are trying to take away her company, and they're using her private life as ammunition against her. Because her boyfriend cheated on her. Ex-boyfriend. And yes. So Ms. Vaughn asked me to pretend to be her boyfriend for a few months, just until her work problems are solved. We'll go to some events together, take some pictures, let people think we're dating, but it's not real, it's like acting, like when you played a tree in the school play. Ava considered this. So you're acting like you're in love with her? Not love, just like we're dating, getting to know each other. And she's paying you. Mason hesitated, then nodded. Yes, She's paying me to help her, and she's letting us stay in this apartment so the reporters can't bother us at our house. How much is she paying you? Enough to make sure you can go to whatever college you want someday. Enough to make things easier for us financially. Ava was quiet for a long moment, processing. Is this because of Mom? Because she got sick and we had to pay for all the medicine? The question hit Mason like a physical blow. He'd tried so hard to shield Ava from the financial devastation of Lauren's illness, from the medical bills that had consumed their savings and maxed out 3 credit cards and still hadn't been enough to save her. Partly, Mason said carefully, your mom's illness was expensive, and we're still paying some of those bills. This will help with that. But it's also about your future, about making sure you have opportunities. So we're doing this for money. The flatness in her voice made Mason wince. We're doing this because sometimes adults make complicated choices that aren't just about right or wrong. Sometimes it's about what helps the most people in the long run. But you're lying to everyone. We're participating in a business arrangement that involves some public deception, yes. That's just lying with fancy words, Daddy. Mason couldn't argue with that. You're right, it is, and I'm not proud of it. But Ava, I need you to understand something. This situation, the reporters, the attention, all of it, is happening whether I help Ms. Vaughn or not. The pictures are already out there. The stories are already being written. At least this way we can control it a little bit. We can set boundaries. We can protect ourselves and still get something good out of a bad situation. Ava chewed her bottom lip the way she always did when thinking hard about something. Will I have to lie too? No, you don't have to do anything. If people ask about Ms. Vaughn, you can just say she's my boss and you don't know about my personal life. That's not even a lie. How much do you really know about what I do at work? Not much, Ava admitted. You talk about shipping routes and logistics algorithms, and I mostly don't understand it. Exactly. So if anyone asks, you just say you're a kid and you don't pay attention to grown-up stuff, okay? Okay. Ava was quiet again. Then, are you going to fall in love with her for real? The question caught Mason completely off guard. What? No, Bug, this is just pretend, just for the cameras. But you danced with her, and you looked happy in the picture. I was trying to help someone who needed help. That's not the same as falling in love. Mom always said you helped people too much, that you'd give someone the shirt off your back even if you were freezing. Mason's throat went tight. Lauren had said that, usually while laughing, usually after Mason had stayed late to help a coworker finish a project or given their last $20 to someone with a broken-down car. Your mom was right about a lot of things, Mason said quietly. She also said you had a good heart, that you saw the best in people even when they didn't deserve it. Ava looked up at him with those dark, knowing eyes. Is Ms. Vaughn a good person? Does she deserve your help? Mason thought about Scarlett, exhausted and desperate, fighting to keep the company she'd built from being stolen by people who saw it as nothing but an asset to be exploited. He thought about her face when she'd admitted the truth, when she'd stopped hiding behind her billionaire armor for just a few seconds. I think she's a person in a difficult situation who's trying her best, Mason said. That's all any of us can do. Ava seemed to accept this. She leaned her head against Mason's shoulder. I miss our house, she said quietly. I know. Me too. Can we go back after? After this is over? Yeah, we can go back. Or we can find a new house, a better one. Whatever you want. I want our house. Where Mom lived with us. Where her stuff still is. Mason's eyes burned. He blinked hard against the feeling. Then that's where we'll go. I promise. They sat together for a while, surrounded by stuffed animals and luxury neither of them had asked for. Outside the windows, the sun was setting over Lake Michigan, turning the water gold and orange and impossible. Mason's phone buzzed. Text from Scarlett. How did the move go? Everything okay? He showed Ava the message. Should I tell her we're settled in? Ava shrugged. I guess. Mason typed back. We're here. Ava's arranging her room. Thank you for the apartment. The response came within seconds. You're welcome. I know this is strange. I'm grateful you're giving this a chance. Ava read the message over his shoulder. Can I meet her? Mason blinked. What? Ms. Vaughn. You're supposed to be dating her, right? Won't it be weird if I never meet her? We're keeping you out of the public part of this arrangement. Remember? No photos, no exposure. But I'm still your daughter. If you were really dating someone, wouldn't she meet me eventually? Ava had a point. Mason hadn't thought that far ahead, hadn't considered what happened when the fake relationship intersected with his actual life. He typed, Ava wants to know if she can meet you. Scarlett's response took longer this time. Are you sure that's a good idea? I don't want to confuse her. Mason showed Ava the message. She made a face. Tell her I'm not confused. Tell her I know this is pretend, but I still want to know who my dad's fake girlfriend is. Mason actually laughed, then typed, Ava says she's not confused and she wants to know who my fake girlfriend is. Her words, not mine. Smart kid, too smart sometimes. How about dinner tomorrow night? Here, at the penthouse. Just the three of us. Low-key, private, no cameras. Mason looked at Ava. She's inviting us to dinner tomorrow night. At her place. Just us. No media. What do you think? Ava's eyes went wide. She lives in a penthouse? Apparently. Is it fancy? Probably extremely fancy. Can I wear my sparkly dress? Mason smiled despite everything. You can wear whatever you want, Bug, he confirmed with Scarlett. They worked out the logistics. Marcus would drive them, 6 p.m., casual dress, though apparently Ava had other plans about that. The rest of the evening passed in a strange domestic routine transplanted into surreal surroundings. Mason made grilled cheese sandwiches in a kitchen with appliances he barely knew how to operate. They ate on the couch watching a nature documentary about penguins, because Ava was going through a penguin phase and had been for 3 months now. Mason helped her brush her teeth in a bathroom with heated floors and a rain shower head the size of a dinner plate. He tucked her into bed surrounded by her stuffed animal guardians, read 2 chapters from their current book, a story about a girl who discovered a dragon living in her barn, and kissed her forehead goodnight. Daddy? Yeah, Bug. Are we going to be okay? The question hit hard, because the truth was, Mason didn't know. He'd signed a contract that would either secure their future or destroy what was left of his integrity. He'd moved his daughter into a billionaire's apartment and agreed to perform a relationship for the cameras. He'd made choices Lauren would have questioned, choices he was already questioning himself. But Ava didn't need his doubts. She needed certainty. We're going to be fine, Mason said firmly. I promise. Okay, Ava yawned, already half asleep. Love you. Love you too, sweetheart. So much. He waited until her breathing evened out, until he was sure she was actually asleep, before retreating to the living room. His phone showed 37 missed calls from numbers he didn't recognize. 63 text messages, mostly from journalists. His email inbox had exploded with interview requests and appearance offers and increasingly bizarre proposals from people who apparently thought dating a billionaire made him some kind of celebrity. Mason deleted everything and opened his laptop instead. The contract Scarlett's lawyers had sent filled 14 pages of dense legal language. Mason had read it 3 times before signing, but now he went through it again, making sure he understood exactly what he'd agreed to. Public appearances at company events. Check. Social media presence to be coordinated through Scarlett's PR team. Check. Physical affection limited to hand-holding, brief kisses on cheek or forehead, and such other displays as would be appropriate for a couple in the early stages of a relationship. That phrase made Mason's skin crawl, but at least it set boundaries. No private romantic or sexual relationship required or expected. That was in bold, probably because Scarlett's lawyers wanted it absolutely clear this wasn't some escort situation. Compensation of $200,000 paid in full upon successful completion of 12-week arrangement, plus housing and security for duration of contract and 6 months after. Immediate termination clause if Ava's well-being was compromised in any way, with compensation prorated based on time served. Confidentiality agreement extending for 5 years post-contract, with penalties for public disclosure of the arrangement's true nature. It was all there. Everything they'd discussed. Everything Mason had demanded. He still felt like he'd sold something he couldn't get back. His phone rang. Not a number this time. Scarlett's name appeared on the screen. He answered. Hey? Hey. Scarlett sounded tired. Just wanted to check in. Make sure you and Ava are really okay. We're fine. She's asleep. I'm reading contracts and questioning my life choices. That's fair? A pause. Mason, if you want to back out, I signed it. I'm not backing out. I'd understand if you did. Would you? Because from where I'm sitting, backing out means the media circus continues without any compensation, without any control, without anything but chaos until they get bored and move on to the next story. At least this way there's a plan. There's a plan, Scarlett agreed. But that doesn't mean it's the right plan. Mason set the laptop aside. Why did you really pick me? And don't give me the speech about credibility and authenticity. There are plenty of credible, authentic people in your orbit. Why specifically me? Scarlett was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was softer. Because you looked at me like I was a person. At the gala, when Dominic was tearing me apart in front of everyone, you didn't see a billionaire, CEO, or a business opportunity, or a scandal. You just saw someone who needed help. And you helped without asking what you'd get out of it. That's basic human decency. You'd be surprised how rare that is in my world. Most people look at me and see dollar signs or connections or leverage. Even before everything with Dominic, even when I thought I had real friends, there was always this calculation happening behind their eyes. What can Scarlett Vaughn do for me? How can I benefit from proximity to her wealth? That sounds lonely. It is, Scarlett laughed, but there was no humor in it. I built this company from almost nothing. My father left me a mid-sized logistics firm that was hemorrhaging money and about 6 months from bankruptcy. I was 26 years old and everyone expected me to fail. Instead, I restructured everything, expanded globally, increased revenue by 600% in 4 years. I did that. Me. Not my father's legacy, not Dominic's connections, not anyone else. Just me. I know. I was there for part of it. And in all that time, I made exactly 0 real friends. I made contacts, I made allies. I made business relationships that looked like friendships, but evaporated the moment they stopped being mutually beneficial. Dominic was supposed to be different. He was supposed to actually care about me as a person, not just as an asset. But he didn't. No, he didn't. And the worst part is, I knew. On some level, I knew the whole time. I just didn't want to believe it. I wanted so badly to believe that someone could love me for me and not for what I could give them. Mason didn't know what to say to that. The raw honesty in Scarlett's voice made him uncomfortable, made him aware that this conversation was crossing from business into something more personal. You'll find that person, he said finally. Someone who sees you for who you are. Will I? Because from where I'm sitting, the only person who's ever looked at me like a human being instead of a bank account is someone I'm literally paying to pretend to care about me. The irony isn't lost on me, Mason. Trust me. I'm not pretending to care about you. I'm pretending to date you. There's a difference. Is there? Yeah, I actually do care that you're in a difficult situation. I care that people are trying to steal what you built. I care that you're exhausted and lonely and fighting battles on 17 fronts at once. I'd care about that even if you weren't paying me. The money just makes it possible for me to actually help instead of just sympathizing from the sidelines. Scarlett was quiet. Thank you, she said eventually, for saying that, even if you don't mean it. I mean it. Okay. She didn't sound convinced. I should let you get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be intense. My PR team wants to release a joint statement about our relationship. Nothing detailed, just confirming that we're seeing each other and asking for privacy. Asking for privacy from the same media you're feeding the story to. I know it's hypocritical. Welcome to public relations. Mason rubbed his eyes. What time tomorrow? Statement goes out at 9 a.m. I'd like you to come to the office around 10 so we can coordinate on the response strategy. Then dinner at 6 with Ava. Sounds like a full day of deception. That's what you signed up for. Yeah, I did. They ended the call. Mason sat in the dark living room of his temporary luxury prison, looking out at Lake Michigan and the city lights and the life he used to have that felt increasingly distant. His phone buzzed one more time. Text from a number he did recognize, his sister Michelle, who lived in Portland and who Mason hadn't spoken to in 3 months because life got busy and family got complicated. What the actual hell, Mason? I just saw you on E! News! Call me immediately. Mason smiled despite everything. Michelle had always had perfect timing. He called. She picked up on the first ring. Start talking, Michelle demanded. And I want the real story, not whatever sanitized version you're planning to feed me. It's complicated. It's always complicated with you. Are you actually dating a billionaire, or is this some elaborate prank? Mason looked around the apartment. The marble counters, the lake view, the security team monitoring the hallway. Define actually dating. Oh my God, Mason, what did you do? So he told her. Not everything. He couldn't violate the confidentiality agreement, but enough. The gala, the dance, the media explosion, the offer, the contract. He left out the specific dollar amounts and the detailed terms, but he gave her the shape of it. Michelle listened without interrupting, which was unlike her. When he finished, she was quiet for several long seconds. Does Ava know? She asked finally. I told her the truth, that it's a business arrangement, that we're helping someone who needs help. And she's okay with it? She's 7. I don't know if she fully understands what okay with it even means in this context, but she knows I'm not actually dating Scarlett. She knows it's temporary. She knows we're doing this for practical reasons. Is that why you're doing it? Practical reasons? Mason thought about the question, about the medical bills and the college fund and the house they'd never own, about security and stability and giving Ava the future Lauren had wanted for her. Partly, he admitted. The money's going to change our lives, Michelle. $200,000. That's transformative for us. I know. And I'm not judging the money part. I'm judging the lying part. Mason, you're the most honest person I know. This is going to eat you alive. Maybe, but it's only 12 weeks. I can survive 12 weeks of anything. Can Ava? The question landed like a punch. Because Michelle was right to ask it. Ava was the one variable Mason couldn't fully control, couldn't fully protect. She'd said she understood, but understanding at 7 years old was different from understanding at 17 when she'd look back on this time and have to reconcile what her father had done. I don't know, Mason said quietly, but it's done now. I signed the contract, I took the apartment, I'm committed. Then I'm here if you need me, both of you. If this goes sideways, if Ava needs somewhere to go, if you need an exit strategy, you call me, anytime. Thank you. I'm serious, Mason. I know you like to handle everything yourself, but you don't have to. Not this time. This is too big. They talked for a few more minutes about logistics and practicalities, and Michelle's job at the architecture firm, and whether she'd be able to visit Chicago anytime soon. Normal sibling conversation, except nothing was normal anymore. Mason ended the call and sat in the dark for a while longer, thinking about choices and consequences and the version of himself who'd existed 48 hours ago before a dance had detonated his entire life. That Mason Cole would have been horrified by what this Mason Cole had agreed to. But that Mason Cole hadn't been staring at medical bills and rental agreements and a future that felt increasingly uncertain. This Mason Cole was doing what he had to do to survive. He hoped that would be enough. The next morning started with Scarlett's PR statement hitting every major outlet simultaneously. Mason read it on his phone while eating breakfast at the obscenely large kitchen island. Scarlett Vaughn and Mason Cole. Confirm relationship. In a joint statement released this morning, Valicrest Global CEO Scarlett Vaughn and Senior Logistics Director Mason Cole confirmed they are in a relationship. Mason and I have been seeing each other for several weeks, Vaughn stated. He's a brilliant, dedicated professional and a wonderful person. We're taking things slowly and ask that the media respect our privacy during this time. Cole echoed the sentiment. Scarlett is an incredible woman, and I'm grateful to be getting to know her. My primary focus remains my daughter and my work at Valicrest Global, and I hope people will understand our desire to keep our personal relationship private. Mason stared at his own quoted words, words he'd never actually spoken, that Scarlett's PR team had written and he'd approved via email at 11 p.m. last night. The lying had officially begun. His phone immediately exploded. Texts from coworkers, from acquaintances, from people he hadn't spoken to in years who suddenly had opinions about his personal life. Mason ignored all of it and got dressed for work. Marcus drove him to Valicrest Global in a black SUV with tinted windows. They entered through the parking garage to avoid the media crews camped at the main entrance. The office felt different the moment Mason stepped off the elevator. Conversation stopped. People stared, then looked away quickly when he met their eyes. Someone actually applauded as he walked past, though Mason couldn't tell if it was sincere or mocking. Jennifer from supply chain caught him in the hallway. "So it's official," she said. "You and the CEO." "Apparently." Gerald's having an absolute meltdown. He spent an hour in his office this morning on the phone, yelling at someone, probably Dominic Hale. That got Mason's attention. "How do you know?" "Everyone knows. Gerald's never been subtle about his outside contacts. Half the department thinks he's been leaking information for months." Jennifer lowered her voice. "Be careful, Mason. You just made yourself the enemy of some very powerful people who don't like losing." She walked away before he could respond. Mason made it to his office, closed the door, and tried to focus on actual work for 90 minutes before Scarlett's assistant called requesting his presence on 47. The executive suite felt like walking into a command center. Scarlett's PR team had taken over the conference room, multiple laptops open, phones constantly buzzing. A woman in an expensive suit was on a video call with what sounded like a crisis management firm. Scarlett stood at the head of the table, looking simultaneously exhausted and energized, like someone running on pure caffeine and determination. "Mason," she gestured him into the room. "Everyone, this is Mason Cole." "Mason, this is my PR team. Victoria heads the department. James handles media relations. Sarah coordinates social strategy." They all nodded at him with expressions that said they knew exactly what this arrangement was and were being paid very well not to care. "We're seeing good initial response to the statement," Victoria said, pulling up something on her tablet. "Sentiment analysis shows 62% positive, 28% neutral, 10% negative. The negative is mostly coming from Dominic Hale's social circle and some business competitors who are questioning the appropriateness of a CEO dating an employee." "Let them question," Scarlett said. "We're not doing anything illegal or even unusual. Plenty of executives date within their organizations." "True. But the optics of it, happening right after your ex showed up with his new fiancée, some outlets are spinning it as reactive, desperate. Then we counter that narrative. Mason, I need you to post something on social media. Nothing elaborate. Just a personal touch that makes this feel organic." Mason blinked. "I don't really use social media." The entire PR team stared at him like he'd announced he didn't believe in gravity. "At all?" James asked. "I have a Facebook account I check maybe twice a year. That's it." Sarah actually laughed. "You're kidding." "I have a 7-year-old daughter and a demanding job. When exactly would I be posting on Instagram?" Victoria made a note on her tablet. "Okay, new strategy. We create accounts for Mason on Instagram and Twitter. We keep the content minimal but authentic. A few photos, some personal observations, nothing that feels manufactured. The key is making him accessible without oversharing." "I'm not comfortable with that," Mason said. Everyone looked at Scarlett. "It's part of the arrangement," she said carefully, "creating a public presence that supports the relationship narrative. It's in the contract. Under social media presence to be coordinated through your PR team. That doesn't mean creating entirely new accounts I've never used. It's implied. No, it's not. Coordinating my existing presence is different from manufacturing one that doesn't exist." The PR team exchanged glances. Clearly, they were used to celebrities who'd do anything for publicity, not stubborn logistics directors who read contracts carefully. "Mason," Scarlett said, her voice taking on that CEO firmness, "this is important. So is maintaining some authenticity. You wanted someone real, remember? Someone credible. How credible am I if I suddenly show up on social media acting like someone I've never been?" Scarlett's jaw tightened. "Fine. We'll use your existing Facebook account and keep new platforms to a minimum. But I need you to work with Sarah on content strategy. At least one post per week that shows we're actually together." "One post per week. Fine." They moved on to other topics. Upcoming events where Mason and Scarlett would need to appear together, media training for Mason in case reporters cornered him, protocols for handling invasive questions. It was like preparing for war, except the battlefield was public perception and the weapons were carefully staged photographs. The meeting lasted 2 hours. By the end, Mason's head was pounding. Scarlett dismissed the PR team and asked Mason to stay behind. Once they were alone, she walked to the windows and stood there with her arms crossed, looking out at the city. "You can't fight me on everything," she said quietly. "I'm not fighting you. I'm maintaining boundaries. You're making this harder than it needs to be. You're asking me to completely transform my life and personality for the cameras. I think pushing back on some of that is reasonable. Scarlett turned to face him. Do you want this to work or not? I want it to work without losing myself in the process. They stared at each other across the conference room, the tension thick enough to cut. Tonight, Scarlett said finally, dinner with Ava. Maybe that'll help. Maybe meeting her will remind both of us why we're doing this. Maybe, Mason agreed. He left before the conversation could spiral into another argument about authenticity versus performance, about what parts of himself he was willing to sell and what parts remained off limits. The rest of the day passed in a blur of work and media monitoring and increasingly surreal text messages from people who suddenly wanted to be his friend now that he was dating a billionaire. At 5:30, Marcus picked up Mason and Ava from the apartment. Ava had indeed worn her sparkly dress, purple with silver sequins that caught the light every time she moved. She'd also insisted on wearing her light-up sneakers, creating a formal-casual hybrid that was pure 7-year-old logic. You look beautiful, Mason told her. I know, Ava said seriously. Do you think Ms. Vaughn will like my dress? I think she'll love it. Scarlett's penthouse occupied the entire top floor of a building even taller than the one where Mason and Ava were staying. The elevator required a code to access, opened directly into her living space. The doors slid open. Ava's mouth fell open. The penthouse was massive, easily 5,000 square feet of open-concept luxury. Windows on 3 sides offered views of the entire city and the lake beyond. The kitchen looked like something from a cooking show, all professional appliances and gleaming surfaces. Art hung on the walls, real pieces that probably cost more than houses. Scarlett stood near the windows, wearing jeans and a simple sweater that somehow still looked expensive. Her hair was down, loose around her shoulders. She looked younger like this, more approachable. Hi, she said, walking toward them, then focusing on Ava. You must be Ava. I'm Scarlett. I love your dress. Ava beamed. Thank you. It's my favorite. The sequins are reversible. Look. She demonstrated, running her hand over the fabric to flip the sequins from purple to silver. That's amazing, Scarlett said, and she sounded genuinely impressed. I don't think I've ever seen sequins do that before. They're new technology sequins. My friend Emma has a shirt with them, but hers are boring blue. Purple's way better. Purple's definitely better, Scarlett agreed. She looked at Mason. Hi. Hi. An awkward silence stretched between them while Ava explored the living room, exclaiming over every new discovery. Thank you for coming, Scarlett said quietly. Thank you for inviting us. I ordered Thai food. I wasn't sure what Ava likes, so I got a variety of things. Pad Thai, spring rolls, rice, some chicken dishes that aren't too spicy. That sounds perfect. Another silence. This was weird. They'd spent hours together over the past 3 years in strategy meetings and project reviews, always with clear professional boundaries. Now those boundaries were gone, but nothing had replaced them yet. They were in some strange liminal space between employer-employee and fake couple, and neither of them knew how to navigate it. Ava saved them. Whoa! She stood in front of a massive aquarium built into one wall, filled with colorful fish and living coral. You have an ocean in your house, Scarlett smiled. It's a saltwater aquarium. Those are clownfish, and that one's a blue tang. The coral is real. I have a whole system that keeps the water balanced so they can thrive. Like Finding Nemo. Exactly like Finding Nemo. Ava pressed her nose against the glass, mesmerized. Scarlett joined her, pointing out different species and explaining their names and habits with surprising knowledge. Mason watched them together and felt something in his chest loosen slightly. This was the first moment since signing the contract that hadn't felt performative. Ava was being completely herself, and Scarlett was responding to her with genuine warmth instead of the careful calculation she showed everyone else. The food arrived. They ate at Scarlett's dining table, which could easily seat 12 but felt strangely intimate with just the 3 of them. Ava dominated the conversation, telling Scarlett about school and her friends and the science project she was working on about penguin habitats. Scarlett listened with full attention, asked questions that showed she was actually interested, laughed at Ava's jokes. It was nice, surprisingly nice. So you're my dad's fake girlfriend, Ava said around a mouthful of pad thai. Mason nearly choked on his spring roll. Ava! What? I'm just clarifying. Scarlett's eyes went wide. Then she started laughing, really laughing, the kind that came from somewhere genuine and surprised. Yes, she said once she'd recovered. I'm your dad's fake girlfriend. Thank you for being direct about it. My dad says lying is wrong, but sometimes adults make complicated choices that aren't just about right or wrong. Ava repeated Mason's words with perfect 7-year-old earnestness. Your dad's right, though I imagine he wishes I wasn't putting him in a position where he has to make those complicated choices. Are you a good person? Ava asked. The question hung in the air. Scarlett set down her fork, looked at Ava with an expression Mason couldn't quite read. I'm trying to be, she said quietly. I don't always succeed. Sometimes I make decisions that help me but hurt other people. Sometimes I'm selfish. Sometimes I use my money and power in ways that aren't fair. But I'm trying to do better. Ava considered this seriously. My mom used to say that trying to be good is more important than being perfect, because nobody's perfect. Scarlett's eyes went shiny. Your mom sounds like she was very wise. She was the best mom ever. She died when I was 3, so I don't remember a lot. But Daddy tells me stories, and we have videos. I'm sure she was wonderful, and I bet she'd be really proud of you. Do you think she'd be mad at my dad for helping you? The question clearly caught Scarlett off guard. She looked at Mason, uncertain. Mason spoke gently. I think your mom would understand that I'm doing my best to take care of you, and sometimes that means making hard choices. But would she like Ms. Vaughn if they met? I think, Mason said carefully, your mom would appreciate that Ms. Vaughn is being honest with us about what this arrangement is, and that she's trying to protect you by keeping you out of the public part of it. Ava nodded slowly, then turned to Scarlett. Are you lonely? Scarlett actually flinched. That's a very perceptive question. My dad gets lonely sometimes, I can tell. He tries to hide it, but I notice. Do you hide it too? Yeah, Scarlett said softly. I hide it too. That's sad. You shouldn't have to pretend you're not lonely. You're right, I shouldn't. They finished dinner talking about less intense topics. Ava's upcoming guitar recital, Scarlett's fish feeding schedule, whether penguins or dolphins were cooler. But something had shifted. The careful performance had cracked open slightly, letting something more real slip through. After dinner, Ava asked to see the rest of the penthouse. Scarlett gave her a tour showing her the library and the second bedroom that had been converted into a home gym and the terrace that wrapped around 2 sides of the building. Mason followed behind, watching Ava's wonder at everything and Scarlett's patience in explaining it all. On the terrace, 49 stories above the city, Ava stood at the railing and looked out at the lights. It's beautiful, she said. It is, Scarlett agreed. She stood beside Ava, and Mason noticed how careful she was to stay an appropriate distance away, not crowding the child's space. Do you ever get scared? Ava asked. Being up so high? Sometimes. When the wind is really strong and the whole building sways a little. The building moves? Just a tiny bit. All tall buildings do. They have to be flexible or they'd break. Ava processed this. Like people? Scarlett looked at her. What do you mean? People have to be flexible too, or they break. That's what my dad says when things are hard. We have to bend but not break. Your dad's very smart. I know. Ava yawned suddenly, hugely. I'm tired. We should get you home, Mason said. They said their goodbyes. Scarlett walked them to the elevator. Thank you for coming, she said. Both of you. Thank you for dinner, Mason replied. Scarlett crouched down to Ava's level. It was really nice meeting you, Ava. I hope we can do this again sometime. Me too. You're nicer than I thought you'd be. Scarlett laughed. I'll take that as a compliment. It is. Bye, Ms. Vaughn. Bye, Ava. And you can call me Scarlett if you want. Okay, bye, Scarlett. In the elevator going down, Ava leaned against Mason, already half asleep. I like her, she murmured. Yeah? Yeah, she's lonely like you. Maybe this pretend relationship will help you both remember how to be not lonely for real. Mason looked down at his daughter, too wise, too understanding, too perfect, and felt his heart break a little. Maybe, Bug. Maybe. By the time Marcus drove them back to their apartment, Ava was fully asleep. Mason carried her inside, got her into pajamas without fully waking her, tucked her into bed. His phone buzzed. Text from Scarlett. "Thank you again for tonight. Ava's wonderful. You're doing an amazing job with her." Mason stared at the message for a long time before responding. "She's the best thing I've ever done. Everything else is just noise." "I believe that." "Sleep well, Mason." "You too." He set his phone down and stood at the window, looking out at the city that had become both prison and stage. 12 weeks. He could survive 12 weeks. He had to. 6 weeks into the arrangement, Mason had almost convinced himself he could do this. Almost. The public appearances had become routine. Scarlett's hand in his at charity dinners, posed photos for social media that Sarah from PR carefully curated, practiced smiles for cameras that never stopped clicking. They'd perfected the performance, the right amount of affection, the careful balance between new relationship excitement and professional restraint. The media had mostly bought it. Sentiment analysis showed approval ratings climbing. The business press had shifted from questioning Scarlett's stability to praising her ability to maintain a personal life while running a Fortune 100 company. Even some of Dominic's allies on the board had softened their opposition. Everything was going according to plan, which should have been Mason's first warning that something was about to go catastrophically wrong. It started on a Thursday morning when Gerald Hastings didn't show up for work. Mason noticed because Gerald never missed work. The man treated his attendance record like a competitive sport, arriving early and leaving late just to prove his dedication to anyone watching. By noon, the rumors started circulating. Gerald had been fired. Gerald had quit. Gerald had been arrested for embezzlement, each story more dramatic than the last. The truth came out at 2 p.m. when Scarlett's assistant summoned Mason to the executive suite. He found Scarlett in her office with two people he didn't recognize, a man and woman in dark suits who had law enforcement written all over them. "Mason," Scarlett said. Her voice was carefully controlled, but he could see the tension in her shoulders. "This is Agent Morrison and Agent Chen from the FBI's White Collar Crimes Division. They have some questions about Gerald Hastings." Mason's stomach dropped. "The FBI?" Agent Morrison, the woman, gestured to a chair. "Please sit, Mr. Cole. We're conducting an investigation into potential corporate espionage and securities fraud. We understand you work closely with Mr. Hastings?" "I work in the same department. We're not close." "But you report to the same chain of command. You'd be aware of his access to sensitive company information." "Gerald's the VP of International Operations. Of course he has access to sensitive information. That's his job." Agent Chen pulled out a tablet, showed Mason a series of emails. "Do you recognize these communications?" Mason scanned them quickly. Shipping manifests, route optimization data, projected timelines for the European expansion, all information that should have been confidential, all information that had been sent from Gerald's email account to an address Mason didn't recognize. "I've never seen these specific emails," Mason said carefully, "but the information itself looks like standard operational data Gerald would have access to." "The recipient is a shell company controlled by Dominic Hale," Agent Morrison said. "We believe Mr. Hastings has been feeding proprietary Valicrest Global information to Mr. Hale for approximately 14 months. The data was then used to give Hale Tech Industries competitive advantages in contract bidding and strategic planning." Mason looked at Scarlett. She was staring at the wall, her expression carved from stone. "Where's Gerald now?" Mason asked. "In custody. We executed a search warrant on his home and office this morning. We found extensive evidence of ongoing coordination with Mr. Hale, including encrypted communications and financial records showing payments totaling over $2 million. $2 million. For selling out the company he'd worked at for 8 years. We're interviewing everyone in the logistics department," Agent Chen continued. "Standard procedure. We need to understand the scope of the breach and identify any other potential participants." They asked Mason questions for 40 minutes. What did he know about Gerald's outside contacts? Had he ever noticed Gerald accessing information beyond his normal purview? Had anyone approached Mason about sharing confidential data? Mason answered honestly. He'd suspected Gerald was feeding information to someone, but he'd assumed it was garden-variety corporate politics, not actual espionage with FBI-level consequences. When the agents finally left, Mason turned to Scarlett. How long have you known? That Gerald was working with Dominic? I suspected for months. That it was this extensive? I found out yesterday when the FBI contacted our legal team. Scarlett stood, walked to the windows. They've been building a case for 6 weeks. They approached me 3 days after we went public with our relationship, asked me to cooperate with their investigation. I've been feeding them information ever since. You didn't tell me. I couldn't. The investigation required absolute confidentiality. I'm part of this arrangement. I deserve to know. Scarlett turned to face him. You're right. I should have told you. But Mason, if this investigation goes where the FBI thinks it's going, Dominic isn't just going to lose his board influence. He's going to face federal charges, securities fraud, corporate espionage, possibly RICO violations if they can prove a pattern of coordinated criminal activity. Mason sat down heavily. This is going to explode. It already is. The FBI executed search warrants on Hailtech's offices this morning. By tonight, every news outlet in the country will be running stories about Dominic Hale's arrest. And they'll connect it back to you, to us. Of course they will. They'll say I orchestrated this as revenge for the affair, that I used my relationship with you to distract from my collaboration with federal investigators, that I'm the scorned ex-fiancé who weaponized law enforcement against the man who humiliated me. The implications crashed over Mason like a wave. The board vote is in 6 weeks. I know. This is going to make everything worse. They'll say you're unstable, vindictive, willing to destroy competitors instead of competing fairly. They'll say a lot of things. Scarlett's voice was tired. But here's what actually matters. Gerald and Dominic broke the law. They stole proprietary information, manipulated markets, and violated about 17 different federal statutes. I cooperated with a legitimate investigation into criminal activity. That's not revenge. That's compliance with law enforcement. You really think the board will see it that way? Some will, some won't. But at least Dominic will be too busy defending himself in federal court to influence the vote. Mason wanted to argue, wanted to point out all the ways this could backfire, but Scarlett's expression stopped him. She looked exhausted, not just physically tired, but worn down to something fundamental. Are you okay? He asked quietly. Scarlett laughed, but there was no humor in it. I just found out the man I almost married has been systematically stealing from me for over a year and is now facing federal prosecution. My VP of International Operations, someone I trusted with critical business operations, sold me out for $2 million. Half my board probably thinks I orchestrated this entire thing to settle a personal vendetta. So no, Mason, I'm not okay. She sat down on the couch, put her head in her hands. Mason crossed the office, sat beside her. Not too close, maintaining the professional distance they'd carefully preserved throughout this arrangement. What do you need? He asked. I don't know. A time machine? A different life? A universe where people don't constantly betray me? I meant realistically. Scarlett looked up at him. Her eyes were red-rimmed, like she'd been crying recently and was fighting not to cry again. Can you come to the press conference? She asked. My lawyers are holding one at 4 p.m. They're going to release a statement about my cooperation with the FBI investigation. It would help if you were there. Visual support shows I'm not falling apart. Even though you are falling apart. Especially because I'm falling apart. Scarlett managed a weak smile. That's the whole point of this arrangement, remember? You make me look stable and functional while I hold myself together with duct tape and sheer stubbornness. Mason checked his watch. 2:15. I need to call Ava's babysitter. Make sure she can stay late. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. I haven't heard what your lawyers are planning to say. The press conference was held in Valicrest Global's main auditorium, packed with journalists and cameras, and the kind of feeding frenzy energy that made Mason's skin crawl. Scarlett stood at a podium flanked by her legal team, Mason positioned slightly behind her in what the PR team had called a supportive but not intrusive spot. Scarlett read a prepared statement. confirmed her cooperation with federal investigators, expressed disappointment that trusted colleagues had engaged in illegal activity, emphasized Valicrest Global's commitment to ethical business practices and legal compliance. She looked composed, professional, in control. Then the questions started. Ms. Vaughn, did you initiate this investigation as retaliation against Dominic Hale? No. Federal investigators approached me with evidence of ongoing criminal activity. I cooperated with their investigation as any responsible CEO would. But the timing seems convenient. You start dating Mason Cole, suddenly you're working with the FBI to take down your ex-fiancée. The FBI has been investigating Mr. Hale for months, long before my personal life became public. The timing is coincidental. Mr. Cole, were you aware of your girlfriend's cooperation with federal investigators? Mason hadn't expected to be questioned directly. He stepped forward slightly. I learned about the investigation today, same as everyone else. Scarlett and I keep our professional and personal lives separate. Her decision to cooperate with law enforcement was made in her capacity as CEO, not as my partner. So she kept you in the dark? She maintained appropriate confidentiality around an active federal investigation. That's not keeping me in the dark. That's following standard legal protocols. Another reporter jumped in. Ms. Vaughn, sources close to the investigation suggest Gerald Hastings has agreed to cooperate with prosecutors in exchange for a reduced sentence. Are you concerned about what he might reveal? Scarlett's expression didn't change. Mr. Hastings engaged in criminal activity. If cooperating with prosecutors helps bring all participants to justice, I support that outcome. Even if it implicates Dominic Hale directly? Especially if it implicates anyone who broke the law. The questions continued for 30 minutes, some legitimate, some designed purely to provoke emotional reactions. Scarlett handled them all with the same careful composure, giving nothing away. Mason stood behind her the entire time, trying to project the supportive boyfriend energy Sarah from PR had coached him on, concerned but confident, proud of Scarlett's integrity, united front against adversity, all the things a real boyfriend would feel. The problem was, some of it wasn't entirely fake anymore. When the press conference finally ended, Scarlett's lawyers escorted them out through a back exit to avoid the media scrum. Marcus had the SUV waiting. In the vehicle, Scarlett slumped against the seat and closed her eyes. That was a nightmare, she said. You handled it well. I sounded like a robot reading from a script. You sounded professional, composed, like someone who has nothing to hide. Scarlett opened her eyes, looked at him. Thank you for being there, for backing me up when that reporter tried to paint this as me keeping secrets from you. You were keeping secrets from me. I know, and I'm sorry. The FBI was very clear that the investigation had to remain confidential until arrests were made. I couldn't tell anyone, even you. Even your fake boyfriend who's supposed to be your partner in this arrangement. Especially my fake boyfriend, because if you'd known and it leaked somehow, the entire investigation could have been compromised. Mason understood the logic. Didn't particularly like it, but understood it. Where are we going? He asked, noticing they weren't heading back to the office or his apartment. My place. I need to decompress and I don't want to be alone right now. Scarlett caught herself. Sorry, that's not fair to you. Marcus can drop you at your apartment first. It's fine. Ava's babysitter already confirmed she can stay until 8. I've got time. They rode the rest of the way in silence. In Scarlett's penthouse, she immediately went to the bar and poured herself 2 fingers of whiskey, downed it in one swallow. You want one? She asked Mason. I'm good. Scarlett poured another, sipped this one more slowly. I keep thinking about what Ava said, that first night at dinner, about how I'm lonely. She's perceptive. She's right. I am lonely, and today just reinforced why. Scarlett walked to the windows, looking out at the city in the late afternoon light. Gerald worked for me for 8 years. 8 years. I trusted him with critical operations. I sent him to negotiate deals in Europe, gave him autonomy and responsibility, and the whole time he was selling me out to Dominic. That's not your fault, isn't it? I hired him. I promoted him. I missed every single sign that he was feeding information to my competitors. He was good at hiding it. That's what made him valuable to Dominic. Scarlett turned to face Mason. Do you know what the worst part is? I'm not even surprised. Disappointed, yes. Angry, absolutely. But surprised? No. Because this is just what people do. They get close, they gain trust, and then they exploit it for their own benefit. Not everyone. Enough people that I've stopped expecting anything different. Mason walked over to her, took the whiskey glass from her hand, and set it on a nearby table. Scarlett, you're spiraling, I get it. Today was brutal and you're processing some serious betrayals. But you can't let that turn into a philosophy about human nature being fundamentally corrupt. Why not? The evidence supports it. The evidence supports that you've been surrounded by ambitious people in a cutthroat industry who sometimes make terrible choices. That's not the same as everyone being untrustworthy. You're not ambitious? Not in the way you mean. I want to do good work and provide for my daughter. That's the extent of my ambition. And the $200,000 I'm paying you, that's not ambitious? The words had an edge to them, not quite hostile, but getting there. Mason took a step back. You want to have this fight? Fine. Yes, I'm taking your money. Yes, I agreed to this arrangement partly for financial reasons. But I've also fulfilled every single term of our contract. I've shown up to every event, coordinated with your PR team, presented a united front even when you kept major developments from me. I've been honest with you about my limitations and my boundaries. So if you're looking for someone to be angry at right now, I'm not the right target. Scarlett's expression crumpled. You're right. I'm sorry. She made a frustrated gesture. I don't know how to handle any of this. Handle what? The investigation? The media attention? The board vote? All of it. This whole situation. You. That last word hung in the air between them. What do you mean, me? Mason asked carefully. Scarlett picked up her whiskey glass again, took another sip. I mean that this arrangement was supposed to be simple. A business transaction. You pretend to date me, I pay you, we both get what we need. But it's not simple anymore. Because of the FBI investigation? Because of Ava. Scarlett set the glass down again. Because every Saturday morning she sends me pictures of her science projects and asks me questions about marine biology. Because she invited me to her guitar recital, and I actually went and sat there watching her stumble through Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, and felt genuinely proud. Because you've let me into your lives in ways that have nothing to do with our contract. Mason's heart was beating too fast. Scarlett, and because you, she continued, are nothing like what I expected. You're supposed to be convenient, credible, a logistics director who knows his place and doesn't complicate things. Instead, you push back on my PR team. You call me out when I'm spiraling. You show up at press conferences and defend me without making it feel performative. You're a real person with real principles and a real life, and that makes this so much harder than it should be. What are you saying? Scarlett looked at him directly. I'm saying I don't know how to do this anymore. The fake relationship part, because parts of it don't feel fake, and that terrifies me. Mason should have had a response ready. Should have had some way to address this development that maintained professional boundaries while acknowledging the reality that, yes, spending 6 weeks pretending to date someone did create a certain intimacy. That dinners with Ava and press conferences and late-night texts about logistics reports and marine biology had blurred lines he'd thought were clearly drawn. But he didn't have a response ready. Because Scarlett had just articulated something Mason had been carefully not thinking about for 3 weeks now. His phone rang, Ava's babysitter. I need to take this, he said. Of course, Mason answered. Hey Sarah, everything okay? Mr. Cole, I'm so sorry to bother you, but Ava's running a fever. It came on really suddenly. She was fine an hour ago and now she's at 101.3. I gave her some children's Tylenol, but I thought you should know. Mason's entire focus shifted instantly. I'm on my way, 20 minutes. He ended the call, looked at Scarlett. Ava's sick. I have to go. What's wrong? Fever. Could be nothing. Could be the start of something. With her asthma, I can't take chances. I'll drive you. You don't have to. I want to. Let me grab my keys. They made it to Mason's apartment in 15 minutes. Scarlett's sports car significantly faster than Marcus's SUV. Sarah met them at the door looking worried. She's in bed. The fever came down a little with the medicine, but she's really listless. Mason went straight to Ava's room. She was curled under her blankets, Mr. Trunk clutched to her chest, her face flushed. Hey Hey, Bug, Mason said softly, sitting on the edge of the bed. How are you feeling? Tired and cold, but also hot. Mason pressed his hand to her forehead. Still warm, but not dangerously so. Does anything hurt? My throat, and my head a little. Probably just a cold or flu. But with Ava's asthma, even minor respiratory infections could escalate quickly. Mason had learned that lesson the hard way 2 years ago when what seemed like a simple cold had turned into pneumonia and a 3-day hospital stay. Okay, let's check your oxygen levels. He got the pulse oximeter from the bathroom, clipped it onto Ava's finger. 96%. Normal range. Her breathing sounded clear. Scarlett appeared in the doorway. Can I do anything? Ava's eyes lit up slightly despite her obvious misery. Scarlett, you're here. I drove your dad home. Wanted to make sure you're okay. I'm sick. I can see that. That's no fun at all. Mason paid Sarah and thanked her for staying. After she left, he got Ava some water and crackers, checked her temperature again. Still 101, but holding steady. Scarlett had moved into the living room, giving them space. When Mason came out 20 minutes later, she was looking at the photos on his bookshelf. Pictures of Ava at various ages, a few of Lauren, one of the whole family from 6 years ago, when everything had still been normal. That's Lauren, Mason said quietly. She was beautiful. She was everything. Scarlett picked up a photo of Lauren and Ava at the park, both laughing at something off camera. Ava has her eyes. Yeah, she does. It must be hard, seeing your wife and your daughter every day. Sometimes, but mostly it's a gift. Like Lauren's still here in a way, you know? Still part of our lives. Scarlett set the photo down carefully. You really loved her. More than I knew it was possible to love another person. And you still do. I'll always love her. That doesn't go away just because she's gone. Scarlett was quiet for a moment. Does that make it harder? This arrangement between us? Pretending to have feelings for someone when you're still in love with your wife? Mason hadn't expected the question. I'm not pretending to have feelings for you, Scarlett. I'm pretending to be in a romantic relationship with you. Those are different things. Are they? Yeah. I do have feelings for you. I care about whether you're okay, whether you're being treated fairly, whether the board vote goes your way. I admire your work ethic and your resilience. I think you're brilliant at what you do, and I'm genuinely glad to know you. But none of that is romantic. It's just human. Human, Scarlett repeated. That's the word you used at the press conference. When that reporter asked if I kept you in the dark, you said I was following protocols. But you could have been angry, could have used that moment to create distance between us. Why would I do that? Because it would be easier. Because getting emotionally involved in this situation is a terrible idea for both of us. We're already emotionally involved. We have been since you invited us to dinner and spent 2 hours talking to my 7-year-old about fish and penguin habitats. Since Ava started texting you science questions and you started answering them. Since we stopped performing for cameras and started just existing around each other. Scarlett closed her eyes. This is such a mess. Daddy? Ava's voice came from the bedroom. Can you come here? Mason excused himself, went back to check on his daughter. She wanted more water and another blanket and for him to read to her. He did all three, sitting beside her bed with their dragon book until she fell asleep mid-chapter. When he came back out, Scarlett was still in the living room. She okay? Scarlett asked. Sleeping. Fever's down to 100.2. I think it's just a regular bug, but I'll watch her closely tonight. Do you want me to go? Mason should have said yes, should have created space and distance and reminded both of them that this was a business arrangement with clear boundaries. Instead, he said, You want some tea? I was going to make some anyway. They ended up on the couch with cups of chamomile, not quite touching, but close enough that Mason could feel the warmth of Scarlett's presence beside him. Tell me about her, Scarlett said. Lauren? If you want to. Mason thought about refusing. This was too personal, too real, too far beyond the scope of their contract, but maybe that was the point. Maybe 6 weeks of performing intimacy had earned them the right to actual intimacy, the kind built on honesty instead of necessity. She was a kindergarten teacher, Mason said. Loved kids, loved books, loved making elaborate art projects that created massive messes. She met every challenge with this kind of stubborn optimism that drove me crazy and also made me love her more. When she got sick, she was furious. Not scared. Furious. Like cancer was a personal insult she needed to argue with. How long? 18 months from diagnosis to the end. Ovarian cancer. By the time they found it, it had already spread. We tried everything, surgery, chemo, experimental treatments. She fought so hard. But some fights you can't win no matter how hard you try. I'm sorry. Me too. Every single day. Scarlett set down her teacup. Can I ask you something? And you can absolutely tell me it's none of my business. Go ahead. When you signed the contract with me, when you agreed to this arrangement, were you thinking about her? About what she would have wanted for you and Ava? Mason had to really think about that. Partly. Lauren would have hated the deception part. She was radically honest, couldn't lie to save her life. But she was also practical. She understood that the world doesn't always work on absolute principles. If she were here, if she could see the situation we're in, I think she'd say— He paused, trying to find the right words. I think she'd say to do what keeps Ava safe and secure and worry about the ethics later. She sounds pragmatic. She was, until she wasn't. Sometimes she'd dig in her heels on the strangest things. Wouldn't let me buy non-organic vegetables because of pesticides, but had no problem eating gas station hot dogs. Insisted on teaching Ava to read at age 3, but let her stay up until midnight watching nature documentaries. She sounds wonderful and exhausting. Mason laughed. That's exactly what she was. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Outside the windows, the city lights reflected off Lake Michigan. Ava's breathing came steady and even from her bedroom. Everything was quiet and ordinary, and strange all at once. Mason, Scarlett said eventually, what happens after? After what? After the 12 weeks. After the board vote. After this arrangement ends and we're just CEO and employee again. What happens to this? She gestured between them, encompassing whatever undefined thing had developed over 6 weeks of pretend dating. I don't know. Me neither. And that scares me more than Dominic's arrest or the board vote or any of the business stuff, because those are problems I know how to handle. But this? I have no idea what to do with this. Mason didn't either. This wasn't in the contract. This wasn't part of the arrangement. This was something that had grown in the spaces between the performance and Saturday morning science project photos and late-night conversations, and the look on Scarlett's face when Ava had asked her if she was lonely. We figure it out when we get there, Mason said finally. Right now, we focus on getting through the next 6 weeks. The board vote, the aftermath of Dominic's arrest, whatever media insanity comes next. We do what we agreed to do, and then we see where we are on the other side. That's remarkably non-committal. That's remarkably honest. Neither of us knows what this is yet. Maybe it's just proximity and circumstance creating the illusion of connection. Maybe it's something more, but we can't figure that out while we're still performing for cameras and following contract terms. Scarlett nodded slowly. You're right. You're frustratingly right. I've been told that before. By Lauren? Constantly. Scarlett smiled, the first genuine smile Mason had seen from her all day. Then she stood. I should go. Let you take care of Ava. Let both of us get some sleep before tomorrow's inevitable media catastrophe. Mason walked her to the door. In the hallway, Scarlett turned back. Thank you, she said, for today, for the press conference, and for letting me be here when Ava got sick, for not making this arrangement feel transactional even when it technically is. You're welcome. She reached out, squeezed his hand once, then left before Mason could respond. He stood in the doorway for a long moment after she'd gone, trying to process everything that had happened in the past 8 hours. The FBI investigation, the press conference, Scarlett's confession about the arrangement not feeling fake anymore, his own growing awareness that he'd stopped counting down the weeks until this ended. Mason checked on Ava one more time, still sleeping peacefully, fever holding steady, before collapsing into his own bed. His phone buzzed. Text from Scarlett. Made it home. Thank you again for tonight. Hope Ava feels better tomorrow. She will. She's tough like her mom. Like her dad, too, I think. Mason stared at that message for a long time before responding. 6 more weeks. 6 more weeks, Scarlett agreed. Then we figure out what comes next. Together? I hope so. Mason set his phone down and stared at the ceiling, trying to figure out when exactly he'd stopped treating this as a job and started treating it as something that mattered. Somewhere between the first dinner and the press conference, between Ava's science questions and Scarlett's admission of loneliness, between the performance and the reality, something had shifted. Mason wasn't sure what to call it yet, but he knew with absolute certainty that when this arrangement ended, walking away was going to hurt far more than he'd ever planned for. 6 more weeks until the board vote. 6 more weeks until Mason had to decide what he was willing to fight for beyond the terms of a contract. 6 more weeks until everything changed again. He closed his eyes and tried to sleep, knowing tomorrow would bring new challenges, new complications, new reasons to question whether he'd made the right choice. But for tonight, for right now, Ava was safe and Scarlett was okay, and that was enough. It had to be enough. The leaked contract appeared online 3 days before the board vote. Mason was at Ava's school watching her present her penguin habitat project when his phone started vibrating with enough intensity to rattle the entire table. He ignored it through Ava's presentation, through the applause when she finished, through the proud hug she gave him afterward. Then he checked his messages and felt the floor drop out from under him. The top headline on every business site was identical. Scarlett Vaughn's fake boyfriend, leaked contract reveals paid relationship arrangement. Someone had obtained a copy of the contract Mason had signed. Not the full 14 pages, but enough. The compensation amount, the timeline, the clause about maintaining appearances of genuine romantic interest, the confidentiality agreement. Everything that proved their entire relationship was a calculated business transaction. Mason's hands went numb. Around him, other parents were chatting about the science projects, about weekend plans, about normal things that existed in a universe where Mason's life wasn't currently imploding in real time. "Daddy, can we get ice cream to celebrate?" Ava asked, tugging on his sleeve. Mason looked down at his daughter, her face bright with post-presentation pride, completely unaware that the fragile structure they'd built over the past 11 weeks was collapsing around them. "Yeah, Bug. Ice cream sounds perfect." He held himself together through the ice cream, through the drive home, through helping Ava with her homework and making dinner and all the normal rituals of single fatherhood that felt surreal against the background noise of his phone, constantly buzzing with calls and texts he couldn't bring himself to answer. After Ava went to bed, Mason finally looked. The media coverage was brutal, not just reporting the facts of the leaked contract, but editorializing about what it meant. Scarlett was manipulative, calculating, willing to hire someone to fake intimacy rather than deal with her actual emotional issues. Mason was a gold digger, an opportunist who'd sold himself and his daughter's privacy for $200,000. The think pieces were already rolling in, about the ethics of transactional relationships, about wealthy people treating everyone around them like purchasable commodities, about single fathers who valued money over integrity. His phone rang. "Scarlett." Mason answered. "Did you leak it?" she asked immediately. No greeting, no preamble. "What?" "No, of course not." "Someone did. Someone with access to the original contract." "How many people had access?" "My legal team, your copy, my copy, the backup on my firm's secure server." Scarlett's voice was tight, controlled in that way that meant she was barely holding it together. "My lawyers are investigating, but Mason, the damage is done. The story's out there. By tomorrow morning, every outlet in the country will have run something about this." "What do we do?" "I don't know. My PR team is in crisis mode. They're drafting responses, but there's no good spin on this. We lied. To everyone, to the board, to the media, to the entire public. That's the story now." Mason walked to the window, looked out at the city lights. Somewhere down there, Dominic Hale was probably celebrating. This was better than anything he could have orchestrated himself. Scarlett's credibility destroyed not by his actions, but by her own desperation. "The board vote is in 3 days," Mason said. "I know. They're going to use this to remove you." "Probably." "Scarlett, I need to go. My lawyers need decisions about how to respond. I just wanted to make sure you weren't the leak." "I wasn't. I wouldn't do that." "I believe you." She paused. "Mason, I'm sorry. This is my fault. I put you in this position. I asked you to compromise your integrity for my benefit, and now both of us are paying the price. We both made this choice. But I made the offer. I created the situation. And I'm so sorry. The line went dead before Mason could respond. He stood at the window for a long time, trying to process what came next. The contract had a confidentiality clause, 5 years of legal penalties if either party disclosed the arrangement's true nature. But someone had leaked it anyway, which meant either Scarlett's legal team had a mole or there'd been a security breach significant enough to compromise their most sensitive documents. Either way, the truth was out. Mason should have felt relieved. No more performing for cameras. No more carefully staged photos and coordinated PR statements. No more lying to everyone about what this relationship actually was. Instead, he felt hollow. His phone buzzed. Text from Michelle. Just saw the news. Are you okay? Is Ava okay? We're fine. It's complicated. Complicated is one word for it. Do you need me to come to Chicago? Mason thought about his sister's offer, thought about having someone from his actual life here to help him navigate the aftermath of this disaster. Maybe. Let me see how the next few days go. I'm here whenever you need me. Love you, little brother. Love you too. The next morning brought new horrors. Someone had found Mason's rental house, the one they'd moved out of when this arrangement started, had interviewed the neighbors, had gotten quotes from people who remembered Lauren, who had opinions about Mason's choices, who were happy to speculate about his motivations for signing the contract. The story shifted throughout the day as new details emerged. Some outlets portrayed Mason as a victim, a struggling single father who'd been manipulated by a desperate billionaire. Others painted him as calculating and mercenary. None of them got it completely right, which somehow made it worse. At work, people avoided him. Not obviously, but enough that Mason noticed. Conversations died when he walked past. The usual morning greetings felt forced and awkward. Gerald Hastings, currently out on bail pending trial, had given an interview to a business magazine. I always suspected something was off about their relationship, he'd said. Scarlett Vaughn doesn't do anything without calculating the strategic benefit. Mason Cole was just another tool she used to maintain her image. That quote was already being circulated widely, despite coming from someone actively facing federal charges for corporate espionage. Mason made it to lunch before his phone rang with a number he didn't recognize. Against his better judgment, he answered. Mr. Cole, this is Richard Jang from the Chicago Sun-Times. I'd love to get your perspective on the leaked contract. Would you be willing to comment on... Mason hung up. The phone rang again immediately. Different number, different reporter, same request for comment. He turned his phone off. At 3 p.m., Scarlett's assistant called Mason's office line. Ms. Vaughn would like to see you, 47th floor. Mason took the elevator up, past curious stares from other employees, to the executive suite that now felt like walking into a war room. Scarlett sat at her desk surrounded by papers and laptop screens, looking like she hadn't slept in days. Her PR team clustered around the conference table, having what looked like an intense debate about response strategies. Mason, Scarlett stood when he entered. Thank you for coming. Can we talk privately? They went into her private office, closed the door. The board moved the vote up, Scarlett said without preamble. It's tomorrow morning instead of Friday. They're claiming the leaked contract represents a material breach of ethical standards and requires immediate action. Can they do that? Apparently they can. My lawyers are fighting it, but we're out of time. Scarlett sat down heavily. Mason, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Okay. Do you regret it, all of this? Signing the contract, doing the public appearances, getting dragged into my corporate nightmare? Mason thought about the question, about the past 11 weeks, about everything they'd been through, about the ways this arrangement had changed both of their lives. Parts of it, he said honestly. I regret that Ava got exposed to this. I regret the lying. I regret that we're both about to face consequences that could have been avoided if I'd just said no at the beginning. But I don't regret getting to know you. Not the billionaire CEO version, the real version. I don't regret the dinners with Ava or the conversations about marine biology or watching you actually relax for 5 minutes at a time. I don't regret seeing you as a person instead of just my boss. Scarlett's eyes were bright. I don't regret it either, any of it, even knowing how this ends. How does this end? Tomorrow morning, the board votes me out. They install someone more controllable, Probably an interim CEO while they search for a permanent replacement. I lose the company I built. And you, she trailed off. And I what? Probably lose your job too. Gerald's allies on the board have been pushing for a full review of the logistics department. With everything that's happened, with your connection to me, you're an easy target. Mason had suspected as much, but hearing it confirmed still hit hard. So we both lose everything. Yeah, we do. They sat in silence for a moment. There is one option, Scarlett said quietly. My lawyers think if we go public with the full truth before the board vote, not just admitting the contract but explaining why, showing the evidence of Dominic's manipulation and Gerald's betrayal, we might be able to reframe the narrative. Show that this wasn't about deception for its own sake, but about protecting the company from legitimate threats. Would that work? Maybe. Maybe not. But it's the only play we have left. Mason thought about it, about standing in front of cameras again, this time to expose every detail of their arrangement and his personal motivations, about making Ava's life even more public than it already was. What do you need from me? He asked. A joint press conference, tomorrow morning before the board vote. We tell the complete truth, the contract, the reasons behind it, the FBI investigation, all of it. We put everything on the record and let people decide what to believe. That's a massive risk. I know, but Mason, I'm not asking you to take that risk for my benefit. If you want to walk away right now, if you want to distance yourself from this entire situation and try to salvage what you can of your career and privacy, I'll understand. I'll release a statement saying this was entirely my idea, that you were coerced, whatever narrative protects you and Ava most. And you'd face the board vote alone. I've been alone for most of my life. I can handle one more day of it. Mason looked at Scarlett, exhausted, desperate, still fighting even though she knew the odds were impossible. Still trying to protect him even as her own world collapsed. He thought about Lauren, about what she would say if she could see him now, facing this choice between self-preservation and standing beside someone who needed him. She'd probably tell him he was an idiot for getting into this situation in the first place, but she'd also tell him that running away when things got hard wasn't who he was. I'll do the press conference, Mason said. Scarlett's eyes widened. Are you sure? No, but I'm doing it anyway. You were honest with me from the beginning about what this arrangement was. You've kept Ava protected as much as possible. And you're right that the only way through this is complete transparency. So let's be transparent. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. We still have to convince an entire board of directors that hiring your boyfriend was somehow a reasonable business decision. Fake boyfriend, Scarlett corrected automatically. Mason held her gaze. Is that still what we're calling this? The question hung between them for a long moment. I don't know what to call it anymore, Scarlett admitted. But I know it stopped being entirely fake somewhere around week 4 when Ava asked me to help with her science project, and I spent 2 hours researching penguin migration patterns because I actually cared about getting the answer right. Week 4, that's specific. I've been keeping track. Of when you started actually caring about my daughter's homework? Of when I started looking forward to Saturday mornings more than board meetings? When your texts became the best part of my day? When I stopped thinking about this as a contract and started thinking about it as something else? Mason's heart was beating too fast. Scarlett, I know this is terrible timing. I know we're about 12 hours away from multiple disasters, but if we're doing complete honesty tomorrow, I need to be honest with you first. Scarlett stood, crossed the office to stand directly in front of him. This arrangement was supposed to save my company. Instead, it gave me something I didn't know I needed. You and Ava became the only real thing in my life, the only people who saw me as something other than a net worth or a position or a strategic asset, and I'm terrified of losing that. Mason should have been careful, should have maintained professional distance, and remembered all the reasons why developing actual feelings during a fake relationship was a catastrophically bad idea. Instead, he said, "You're not losing us. The contract ends after the board vote. You'll go back to your life. I'll figure out whatever comes next." Scarlett, you're not losing us. The contract ends, the arrangement ends. But that doesn't mean we end. You'd want to keep seeing me, even after all this? I'd want to keep seeing you, especially after all this. Because all this proved that you're exactly who I thought you were. Someone brilliant and flawed and fighting like hell to hold on to what matters. Someone worth knowing regardless of what business disasters are happening around us. Scarlett looked at him with an expression Mason couldn't quite read. Hope, maybe. Or disbelief that someone would actually choose to stay. I'm probably about to lose my company, she said. Probably. And you might lose your job. Might. So we'd both be unemployed disasters with criminal investigations swirling around us and media coverage that makes us look like manipulative sociopaths. When you put it that way, we sound extremely attractive. Scarlett actually laughed. Then, before Mason could process what was happening, she stepped forward and kissed him. Not the careful staged kiss on the cheek they'd performed for cameras. A real kiss. The kind that said everything they'd been carefully not saying for 11 weeks. Mason kissed her back, his hands coming up to frame her face, and for just a few seconds the rest of the world disappeared. When they finally broke apart, Scarlett was smiling. That wasn't in the contract, she said. No, that was very much off contract. We should probably stop before my PR team walks in and has a collective heart attack. Probably. Neither of them moved. Mason's phone buzzed. He ignored it. Tomorrow's going to be brutal, Scarlett said quietly. Yeah. But we do it together? Together, Mason agreed. They spent the next 3 hours preparing for the press conference with Scarlett's legal team and PR advisors, going over exactly what to say, what to admit, what evidence to present about Dominic's schemes and Gerald's betrayal, crafting a narrative that was honest without being completely self-destructive. At 7 p.m., Mason left to pick up Ava from her after-school program. He needed to tell her what was coming, prepare her for the media storm that would follow tomorrow's press conference. They had dinner at the apartment, pizza, because Mason's brain was too fried to cook anything more complicated. Ava could tell something was wrong. Are you and Scarlett breaking up? She asked halfway through her second slice. What makes you think that? You look sad, and you keep checking your phone like you're waiting for bad news. Mason set down his pizza. Ava, you remember how I explained that my relationship with Scarlett was pretend? Part of a business arrangement to help her with some work problems? Yeah. Well, some people found out about that arrangement, and tomorrow Scarlett and I are going to talk to reporters and explain the whole situation. The real truth about why we were pretending to date. Ava's eyes went wide. Is that bad? It's complicated. Some people are going to be angry that we lied. Some people are going to understand why we did it. But either way, there's going to be a lot of attention on us for a while. Will reporters come to my school again? Maybe. But Marcus and his security team will make sure you're safe. And if anyone bothers you, you tell your teachers immediately and they'll handle it. Ava chewed thoughtfully. Are you in trouble? Kind of. I made some choices that seemed right at the time, but now they're creating problems. Because of the money? Partly, and partly because I wasn't completely honest with everyone about what the arrangement was. But you were honest with me. I was. I promised I'd always tell you the truth, and I kept that promise. Ava put down her pizza. Daddy, I have a question. Okay. Do you actually like Scarlett? Not for the arrangement, but really like her? Mason should have seen that question coming. His daughter was too perceptive for her own good. Yeah, Bug, I really like her. Good. Because she really likes you too, I can tell. How can you tell? The way she looks at you when you're not paying attention, like you're the most important person in the room, and the way she laughs at your jokes even when they're not funny. My jokes are hilarious. They're dad jokes, which are only funny to other dads. Mason smiled despite everything. Fair point. So after tomorrow, after you tell everyone the truth, will you keep seeing her, for real this time? I'd like to, if she still wants to see me after all this is over. She will, Ava said with complete certainty, because you make her not lonely, and she makes you not lonely too. Mason's throat went tight. When did you get so wise? I've always been wise. You just don't always pay attention. That night, after Ava went to bed, Mason sat at the window and tried to prepare himself for what was coming. The press conference, the board vote, the public dissection of every choice he'd made over the past 11 weeks. His phone buzzed. Text from Scarlett. Can't sleep. Keep thinking about tomorrow. Same. Do you think this will work? The press conference? I think it's our best shot. Might not save your position, but at least we'll go down telling the truth. That's strangely comforting. Glad to help. A pause. Then, Mason, about earlier, in my office, I shouldn't have kissed you right before everything potentially explodes. I didn't mind. No? No. Though maybe we could do it again sometime when we're not facing multiple disasters. Like a date? An actual date, not a contract-mandated public appearance? Exactly like that. I'd like that, Scarlett typed. Assuming I'm not a completely unemployed pariah by this time tomorrow. Even if you are. Especially if you are. Because then we'd both be disasters together. 2 disasters on a date. That sounds like a terrible reality show. Or a pretty good foundation for something real. Scarlett took a long time to respond. When she finally did, it was just, "See you tomorrow. Thank you for doing this with me. See you tomorrow. Try to sleep." You too. Mason didn't sleep much. He kept running through possible scenarios, preparing for questions, trying to figure out how to explain complex motivations in a way that wouldn't sound completely calculating. By the time his alarm went off at 6 a.m., he'd been awake for hours. The press conference was scheduled for 9:30, 90 minutes before the board vote. Scarlett's team had rented a hotel conference room large enough to accommodate the expected media turnout. Mason dropped Ava at school with explicit instructions to stay inside, to not talk to any strangers, to call him immediately if anything weird happened. "I'll be fine, Daddy," Ava said, hugging him tight. "You go tell everyone the truth. I'm proud of you." Those words carried Mason through the drive downtown, through the security checkpoint at the hotel, through the green room where he and Scarlett waited while her PR team did final preparations. Scarlett wore a navy suit that looked professional and serious. Her hair was pulled back. No jewelry except simple earrings. She looked like a CEO, ready to face consequences. "Ready?" she asked Mason. "Not even a little bit." "Me neither. Let's do it anyway." They walked into the conference room together, cameras everywhere, journalists packed into every available space. The energy was predatory, everyone waiting for blood. Scarlett stepped up to the podium. Mason stood beside her, close enough to show solidarity without crowding her space. "Thank you all for coming," Scarlett began. "I'm going to make a statement, then Mason and I will take questions. 3 days ago, a contract was leaked that revealed my relationship with Mason Cole was part of a paid arrangement. That contract was real. The arrangement was real, and I'd like to explain why." She walked through everything: Dominic's betrayal, the board's concerns about her stability, the strategic calculation that led her to offer Mason a contract. She didn't sugarcoat it or try to make it sound noble. She presented it as exactly what it was, a desperate move by someone trying to hold on to what she'd built. Then Mason stepped forward. "I signed that contract for 3 reasons," he said, his voice carrying across the room. "Money, security for my daughter, and because I believe Scarlett Vaughn was getting a raw deal from people trying to exploit her personal pain for corporate gain. Was it the right decision? I don't know. Would I make the same choice again? Probably not. But I don't regret getting to know Scarlett as a person, and I don't regret standing beside someone who was fighting to protect something that mattered." The questions came fast and brutal. "Mr. Cole, did you consider the ethical implications of lying to the public?" "Every day. But I also considered the ethical implications of standing by while someone I respected got torn apart by people using her private life as a weapon." "Ms. Vaughn, do you think this arrangement was appropriate given your position as CEO?" "No. It was a massive error in judgment, but it was made in the context of an ongoing campaign to undermine my leadership using tactics that had nothing to do with my actual job performance." "Are you two actually in a relationship now, or is this press conference part of the performance?" Scarlett looked at Mason. He nodded. "The contract ended," Scarlett said. "What we're building now is real. Messy and complicated and probably terrible timing, but real." The conference lasted 45 minutes. Some questions were fair, some were designed to provoke. Mason and Scarlett answered all of them with as much honesty as they could manage. When it finally ended, they left through a side exit to avoid the media crush. In the car heading to Valcrest Global for the board vote, Scarlett took Mason's hand. "Whatever happens next, thank you. for standing with me, for being honest even when it cost you, for being exactly who you said you were from the beginning. We're not done yet. You've still got a vote to survive. I'm not going to survive it. The board made their decision before we ever walked into that press conference, but at least now when they remove me, the record will show why. She was right. The vote took 30 minutes. Mason waited outside the boardroom, watching through the glass walls as Scarlett presented her case. Watched as board members asked questions, made statements, cast their votes. When it ended, Scarlett walked out with her head high and her eyes dry. Unanimous, she said quietly. Effective immediately, I'm no longer CEO of Valicrest Global. Mason pulled her into a hug right there in the hallway, not caring who saw or what they thought. I'm so sorry. Don't be. I built something amazing. They can take my title, but they can't take what I accomplished. That afternoon, Valicrest Global's board announced Scarlett's removal and the appointment of an interim CEO, pending a permanent replacement. The official statement cited recent revelations about ethical lapses and judgment errors that compromised the company's integrity. Mason's employment was under review, which was corporate speak for, "You're getting fired, but we need to do paperwork first." He went home early, picked up Ava from school, and tried to figure out what came next. His phone rang that evening. Scarlett. "I'm at the park by your apartment," she said. "The one with the duck pond. Can you and Ava meet me?" They found her sitting on a bench feeding ducks with bread she must have brought specifically for that purpose. She looked different without the CEO armor. Younger, more vulnerable, more real. "Scarlett!" Ava ran ahead, immediately launching into a story about her day. Scarlett listened with complete attention, asked questions, laughed at the funny parts. Then she looked at Mason. "I figured something out today," she said. "Losing the company hurts. It's going to hurt for a long time. But sitting here feeding ducks with you two, this doesn't hurt. This feels right in a way nothing's felt right in years." "So what do you do now?" Mason asked. "I take some time. I figure out who Scarlett Vaughn is when she's not the youngest CEO of a Fortune 100 company. I probably get therapy because I have about 17 years of unprocessed emotional trauma to work through. And if you're willing, I'd like to do some of that figuring out with you and Ava around." "Like dating? Actual dating, not contract dating?" "Exactly like that. Slow and messy, and with no PR team coordinating our social media presence." Mason sat down beside her on the bench. Ava continued feeding ducks, giving them a semblance of privacy. "I'd like that too," he said. "Though fair warning, I'm probably getting fired. So I'll be an unemployed disaster with a complicated romantic history and a 7-year-old daughter. And I'm a former billionaire CEO with federal investigators crawling through my entire professional history and a talent for making terrible relationship decisions. We're quite the pair. The worst, absolutely catastrophic." They were both smiling. Ava turned back to them. "Are you two going to keep being weird, or can we get ice cream? I think we all deserve ice cream." "That's the best idea anyone's had all day," Scarlett said. They walked to the ice cream shop together, not performing for cameras, not following contract terms, just 3 people who'd found each other in the middle of disasters and decided to see what happened when the disasters ended. 2 months later, Mason accepted a position with a smaller logistics firm that offered better hours and no corporate drama. Scarlett started consulting with startups, teaching young entrepreneurs how to build sustainable businesses without sacrificing their humanity. She downsized from the penthouse to a smaller apartment in Mason's neighborhood. They had dinner together 3 nights a week, sometimes at Scarlett's place, sometimes at Mason's. Ava insisted on helping cook, which meant chaos in the kitchen and food that didn't always turn out right. It was imperfect and ordinary, and nothing like the luxury of their contract-mandated arrangement. It was also the most real thing either of them had experienced in years. On a Saturday morning, 6 months after the board vote, Mason woke up to find Ava already awake and working on a new science project at the kitchen table. Scarlett was there too. She'd stayed over the night before, sleeping in the guest room because they were taking things genuinely slow this time. "Morning," Scarlett said, handing Mason coffee. "Ava's building a model of the solar system. I've been reassigned to asteroid belt duty." "That's an important job." "I take it very seriously." They worked on the solar system together, the 3 of them arguing good-naturedly about whether Pluto should be included and exactly how many moons Jupiter had. It was domestic and chaotic and covered in glue. Later, after Ava went to play at Emma's house, Mason and Scarlett sat on the couch with fresh coffee. "I've been thinking," Scarlett said. "Dangerous." "Probably, but I wanted to say something about us, about how this started." "Okay?" "I used to think the arrangement was the mistake, that hiring you to fake a relationship was where everything went wrong. But I don't think that anymore. I think the arrangement was just the mechanism that forced us to actually know each other. The mistake would have been letting you stay a name on an organizational chart, someone I saw in meetings but never really saw." "So you're saying the fake relationship was actually good?" "I'm saying it was necessary. Not the lying part or the contract part or the performance part, but the part where it made us spend time together, where it gave me permission to text you about Penguin facts and show up at Ava's guitar recital and exist in your life outside of corporate hierarchy." Mason set down his coffee. "You know what I learned? That money doesn't actually change anything fundamental. When I signed that contract, I thought $200,000 would solve all my problems, make everything easier, give me security I'd been chasing since Lauren died. Did it? The money helped. I paid off medical bills, started Ava's college fund properly, got her the new inhaler her doctor recommended, all practical things that made our lives materially better. But the thing that actually changed, that was knowing you. Having someone in my life who saw me as more than just a single dad trying to survive. Who made me remember I'm allowed to want things beyond just baseline stability." Scarlett leaned her head on his shoulder. "We're both disasters, you know that? I'm aware. But maybe disasters who figured out how to be disasters together. That's weirdly romantic. I'm working on my romantic game. It's been a while." Mason kissed the top of her head. "You're doing fine." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching dust motes drift through sunlight from the window. "Mason." "Yeah?" "When Ava asked me that first night if I was lonely, I lied. I said I hide it. But the truth is, I'd forgotten what not lonely felt like. I'd been alone so long I thought it was just my normal state, that some people were meant to build empires, and other people were meant to build families, and you couldn't have both. And now? Now I know that's garbage. You can build whatever you want as long as you have people who actually see you, who show up on Saturday mornings to help with science projects, and don't care that you're not a billionaire CEO anymore. For the record, I liked you better as a person than as a billionaire. Most people wouldn't say that. Most people are idiots." Scarlett laughed. Then she shifted to look at Mason directly. "I love you. I know that's probably too soon to say, and we're supposed to be taking things slow, and I'm absolutely terrible at relationship pacing, but I need you to know, you and Ava are the best thing that ever happened to me, even though we met because I was desperate enough to hire a fake boyfriend." Mason's heart kicked hard against his ribs. "I love you too," which is insane because 6 months ago, you were just my boss, and I was just trying to survive a charity gala. But somewhere between the contract and the board vote and feeding ducks in the park, you became essential. Essential. I like that word better than perfect. Good. Because you're not perfect. You're stubborn and controlling, and you still try to manage situations instead of just experiencing them. And you're too self-sacrificing, and you deflect with humor when things get emotionally intense, and you still feel guilty about taking the money even though you earned every penny. So we're both messes. Absolutely. But we're messes who show up for each other, who tell the truth even when it's hard, who feed ducks and build solar systems and figure out how to be not lonely together. Mason kissed her, properly this time, without the weight of contracts or board votes or media scrutiny. Just two people who'd found each other in the wreckage of their carefully constructed lives and decided to build something new from the debris. When they broke apart, Scarlett was smiling. "What?" Mason asked. "I'm just thinking about how this started. Me asking you to dance because I was desperate to prove something to my ex-fiancé. You agreeing because you didn't want to be rude. Neither of us having any idea where it would lead. And where did it lead? Here. To Saturday mornings and science projects and learning that the best things in life don't come from billion-dollar companies or $200,000 contracts. They come from showing up, from being honest, from letting people see you when you're falling apart, and trusting they'll stay anyway." Mason thought about that, about Lauren and her radical honesty, about the promise he'd made to take care of Ava, about all the choices that had led him to this moment. "You know what the weirdest part is?" he said. "I spent 4 years after Lauren died just trying to survive, just trying to be enough for Ava and pay the bills and get through each day without completely breaking down. I never imagined having this again, someone to love who loved me back. I thought that part of my life was over. And now? Now I know it wasn't over. It was just waiting for the right disaster to bring it back." They spent the rest of the day in comfortable domesticity, picked up Ava from Emma's house, made dinner together, chicken stir-fry that Ava insisted on helping with, creating magnificent chaos in the process. Watched a nature documentary about Antarctica because Ava's penguin phase showed no signs of ending. That night, after Ava went to bed, Mason stood at the window of his small apartment and looked out at the city. The same view he'd had for years, but somehow different now, less lonely, more full of possibility. Scarlett came to stand beside him, her hand finding his. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what?" "For saying yes. That night at the gala, when I asked you to dance, you could have walked away, should have walked away. Instead, you said yes and changed everything. You're welcome. Though I'm pretty sure you changed everything, not me. We changed each other. That's how this works, right? You let someone in and they rearrange your entire life, and somehow it ends up better than it was before." Mason pulled her close, kissed her forehead. "Yeah, that's exactly how it works." They stood together at the window, watching the city lights reflect off Lake Michigan. Two people who'd learned the hard way that the things worth having were rarely the things you could buy. That real connection required honesty, even when honesty was terrifying. That family wasn't always the one you were born into. Sometimes it was the one you built from broken pieces and second chances, and the courage to show up imperfect. Somewhere in the apartment, Ava slept peacefully, surrounded by her stuffed animal guardians and science projects, and the security of knowing she was loved completely. By her father, who'd sacrifice anything for her. By the woman who'd started as a contract and become family. And Mason realized something he'd known intellectually, but finally felt in his bones. He'd kept his promise to Lauren, not by protecting Ava from every hardship or giving her a perfect life free from complications, but by showing her that people could make mistakes and still be good. That love was worth the risk, even when the risk seemed insurmountable. That sometimes the best things emerged from the worst circumstances if you were brave enough to stay and honest enough to see them through. The billionaire who couldn't afford to fall apart had fallen apart anyway. And in the falling, in the honesty, in the messy aftermath of disasters and board votes and federal investigations, she'd found something money could never buy. She'd found home. Not in a penthouse or a luxury apartment or any physical space, but in Saturday morning science projects and duck-feeding expeditions and the radical act of letting someone see you completely and staying anyway. Mason Cole and Scarlett Vaughn were still disasters, but they were disasters together. And somehow, that made all the difference.